Late at night, one by one, the lights in the City of Freedom went out. The fire in the communal kitchen went out, the hammering in the workshops stopped, the children were herded into the houses, and the old people sat at the door dozing. The moon rose to its highest point, its silvery light shining on the ruins, casting a long, long shadow of Mr. Mo's umbrella, like a needle pointing into the distance. Sumuking sat outside the medical tent. She couldn't see the moon, but she could feel the light, not the light her eyes could see, but the warmth her skin could feel. The moonlight was bright, unlike the sun. She held the silver pen in her hand, the nib was worn down, and the words writing on the pen were barely legible. Ever since returning from the Tower of Babel, the pen's power had been waning. She had used it too much. Writing in her diary, writing memories, writing those unforgettable names. With each stroke, the pen weakened further. Now it could only write very faint words, like a spring about to dry up. A piece of paper lay on her lap. It was covered with the word doctor, written over and over, densely packed. But every single doctor was crossed out, some with one stroke, some with two, some so many that the paper was torn. She didn't know why she was writing the word, nor why she was crossing it out. She simply sat there, pen in hand, writing on the paper, then crossing it out. She wrote, crossed, wrote, and repeated this endlessly. Footsteps came from behind. They were light, but steady. She recognized the footsteps, not the mechanical legs of Iron Hammer, not the silent steps of the Red Queen, not the light, quick steps of White Deer. They were Lin Yuan's. Lin Yuan walked to her side, but didn't sit down. Instead, he stood. He looked down at the paper for a long time, as if deep in thought. "What are you writing?" he asked. Sumuking paused for a moment. She didn't look up, because she couldn't see him, and looking up wouldn't make a difference. "I'm writing down who I am." Her voice was soft, as if afraid of waking someone. "Before, I was a saint, the third seat of the Radiant Church, the spokesperson for the Lord of Radiance. Later, I became a traitor, escaping from the church and following a godless man. Now I'm a doctor in the City of Freedom." She paused. "But is being a doctor enough?" Lin Yuan crouched down to look her in the eye. She couldn't see his eyes, but he did it anyway. "How many people have you saved?" Sumuking was stunned for a moment. "What? How many people have you saved?" "Kindergarten children, refugees from Water City, everyone in the City of Freedom. Have you counted?" Sumuking didn't speak. Her fingers traced the shape of the pen, once, then again. "Xiao, Tiantian, Principal, Luo Xiao, Huangju, Taikui, Beilu, Mr. Mo." Lin Yuan read out each name one by one. "And me. You saved me. In the church, in the Tower of Babel, in this city. You don't need divine magic, you just need your hands." Sumuking lowered her head, her milky white eyes fixed on the paper covered with the word doctor that had been crossed out. "What can my hands do?" she asked softly. "I can't see the wound, I can't feel the pulse, and I can't even wrap the bandages tightly." "You're very persistent," Lin Yuan said. "Last time, when Iron Hammer's mechanical arm came loose, you were the one who tightened the screws for him. You couldn't see it, but you felt where it was loose. Your hands are more accurate than your eyes." Sumuking didn't speak. Her hand was still stroking the pen, but slower than before. "You're trying to comfort me," she said. "I'm telling the truth." Silence. A gust of wind blew through the medical tent, lifting a corner of the paper. Sumuking reached out and pressed it down, her fingers resting on the crossed-out doctors. "Lin Yuan, and what about your hand? When you hold my hand, is it the doctor's hand, or your own?" Lin Yuan looked at her hands. Rough, with fine lines, her nails trimmed short. He remembered on the 6th floor of the Tower of Babel, she sacrificed her sight, saying, "You will be my eyes." He agreed. His hands were her eyes. His hands weren't the doctor's hands. They were hers. "Mine," he said. Sumuking remained silent for a long time. Long enough that the moon had moved from east to west, long enough that the paper had been crumpled and then flattened by the wind. Then she smiled. There was weariness in that smile, and a sense of relief that it's enough. She crumpled the paper into a ball and threw it on the ground. The ball rolled twice and came to rest next to a pebble. She picked up her pen, laid out a new sheet of paper, and wrote a word. "Doctor." Each stroke was slow and deliberate. After writing it, she didn't cross it out. She looked at the word "no," milky white eyes were staring in its direction. She couldn't see it, but she knew it was there. She didn't cross it out. "That's enough," she said. Lin Yuan stood up and extended his hand. She took his hand and stood up. Her hand was rough, but warm. "Go back to sleep," he said. "And you?" "I'll sit for a while longer." Sumuking nodded. She released his hand, turned, and walked towards the medical tent. After a few steps, she stopped. "Lin Yuan, you say my hands can save lives. What can your hands do then?" Lin Yuan looked at his hand. The glove was still there, a dark red light flowing between his fingertips. This hand had touched scripts, rewritten rules, and held the writer's pen. It had done many things, but the most important thing was only one. "I'll hold your hand," he said. Sumuking didn't turn around. But she smiled. He didn't see the smile, but he could feel it. She walked into the tent. Lin Yuan sat outside the medical tent, picked up the crumpled paper ball, and unfolded it. It was covered with the word doctor, each one crossed out. But the last one, not just doctor, but the two characters for doctor, was crossed out, revealing a tiny, almost invisible word underneath. He leaned closer to look. "You." When Sumuking crossed out doctor, she wrote "you." It wasn't for herself, but for him. Lin Yuan folded the paper and put it in his pocket, along with his business card, badge, stone, metal, painting, umbrella, paper, pen, paper flowers, scraps, letter, and diary. More than 20 items. More than 20 reasons he couldn't forget. His pocket grew fuller and fuller, as did his heart. In the distance, Iron Hammer stood at the workshop entrance, his mechanical arm reflecting a cold light in the moonlight. He could no longer speak, nor see, but he could feel the vibrations Lin Yuan's heartbeat, from fast to slow, from chaotic to steady. He tapped the ground thump. Then he turned and walked into the workshop. White Deer sat in front of the painting, sketching a person in her sketchbook. Long hair, milky white eyes, wearing a gray hoodie. Next to it was written a line, Doctor. She didn't know what doctor meant, but she wrote it down. Lin Yuan stood up, brushed the dust off his trousers, and turned to walk towards the sentry post. He didn't stop as he passed the tent entrance, but he heard the sounds coming from inside. Samuking was smiling. It wasn't that light, tentative smile from before. It was a smile of certainty, like someone who has walked a long way, finally sat down, and realized they've found the right place. The night in the City of Freedom is still very quiet, but it wasn't the kind of quiet that comes from exhaustion. The name City of Freedom first came from the mouth of a deserter. The man was a low-ranking oracle of the Church of Radiance, who deserted during a cleansing mission and was expelled from the church. He wandered to these ruins and found no idols, no altars, and no one demanding his kneeling. He drank a cup of cheap liquor he'd bought with mythical crystals in a tavern, and drunkenly murmured, "The people there, they're all monsters. But monsters don't pay taxes." The news spread like wildfire among the supernatural beings. Who are the prophets? They are those forgotten by the gods, feared by humanity, those who would be scalded by holy water in the churches of true gods, and driven mad by whispers before the altars of evil gods. They have no divine ranks, no divine quests, no divine favor. Their abilities are innate, distorted, and incomplete like a rough sketch scribbled by the creator, full of hasty strokes and glaring errors. But they wanted to live. One Echo. Echo was the seventh to arrive in the City of Freedom. He looked to be in his early 20s, as thin as a bamboo pole, with layers upon layers of cloth wrapped around his neck. He didn't speak, not because he was mute, but because of his ability to mimic voices. He could reproduce any sound perfectly with his mouth after hearing it just once. Birdsong, rain, explosions, screams, even someone's dying words, "Save me." His throat was like a never demagnetized cassette tape, etched with everything he had ever heard, ready to be played at any time. The price he pays is that he loses his voice for 3 days after each copy. For 3 days, he couldn't utter a single word, not even a hum. It felt as if someone had ripped his vocal cords out by the roots, leaving only an empty, hollow sound in his throat. He arrived in the City of Freedom on the second day of his period of muteness. He stood at the city gate, communicating with pen and paper and a hammer. Hammer frowned as he looked at the words he had written, "You can copy my voice." The Echo nodded. Hammer hesitated for a moment, then tapped the anvil 3 times with the metal fingers of his prosthetic arm. Thump, thump thump. The rhythm is strange, it doesn't resemble Morse code, but rather some kind of primitive drum beat. Echo closed his eyes, his throat trembling slightly. 3 seconds later, he opened his mouth and made a sound exactly like the hammer striking. Thud, thud thud. Then, the voice transformed into the sound of a hammer. "I am Iron Hammer," he said. His voice was rough, hoarse, with a metallic quality, exactly the same as the voice Iron Hammer once possessed. "I am human." The hammer's robotic arm paused for a moment. Since his legs were amputated and replaced with mechanical prosthetics, he hadn't heard his own voice in a long time. Not because he couldn't speak, his vocal cords were intact. Rather, it was because he wasn't sure if the words spoken by this body, modified by the King of Anvils, could still be considered a human voice. He once said to himself in the mirror late at night, "I am Hammer." The mechanical prosthetic eye in the mirror flashed red, and the voice sounded like it was coming from a radio. But now, the Echo has given him an answer. The voice was exactly the same as he remembered. Rough, real, alive. The hammer remained silent for a long time, then used its mechanical fingers to strike a long, complex rhythm on the anvil. The Echo, after being listened to once, was replicated and became the hammer's voice. "Welcome to the City of Freedom. Here there are no gods, only people." Echo laughed and wrote on the paper, "Thank you. But am I a human being?" Hammer looked at the words and placed the mechanical arm on his shoulder. The weight of the metal made Echo sway, but Hammer didn't let go. "Who are you?" Later, Echo became the megaphone of the Free City. Those who had lost their voices because of their abilities, those who could not speak, those whose words were stuck in their throats and turned into thorns, all came to him. Bai Lu sought him out and wrote down what she wanted to say on a piece of paper. He then replicated her voice, a girl's, timid, as if afraid of disturbing something. "I'm sorry." Hammer approached him, striking a rhythm with his robotic arm, and he mimicked Hammer's voice. "Damn it, this crappy city wall has collapsed again." The candle looked for him, lip reading, and he mimicked the old woman's voice. "It's almost done cooking, time to add salt." For each reissue, he would observe 3 days of silence. But he didn't care, because during his days of silence, he heard more. Second, stone statues. The statue isn't called a statue anymore. No one remembers his name, including himself. He appeared on the 10th day of the construction of the City of Freedom. That day, the city wall was only half built, and 3 of the mystics responsible for carrying the stones collapsed from exhaustion. Hammer was worrying when he saw a dusty figure emerge from the ruins. The man looked to be in his 40s, wearing a worn-out construction worker's vest, his face etched with the marks of time. He walked to the city wall, stretched out a hand, and placed it on the stone. His skin began to change. Starting at his fingertips, it turned grayish-white, then dark gray, and finally became the texture of granite. The color spread from his fingers to his palms, from his palms to his arms, and finally covered his entire right arm. His arm transformed into a thick stone pillar, weighing hundreds of pounds. He stuck his arms into the foundation and then started walking. One step, one insertion. One step, one insertion. He was like a human pile driver, using his petrified arms to compact the soft foundation. Each strike shook the ground, and each strike made his brow furrow even more. Half an hour later, he stopped, and his right arm returned to its flesh color. Then he started coughing. It wasn't an ordinary cough, but the kind that seemed to be squeezed from the very marrow of his bones, a cough mixed with fragments of stone. What he coughed up wasn't phlegm, but fine, gray stone powder, like a ground.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Up tombstone. Iron Hammer handed him a jug of water and asked, "How long has it been?" The stone statue took a sip of water, rinsed the stone dust from its mouth, and said, 10 years. It awakened before the Great Rift. I was hit by a falling rock at the construction site. I didn't die, and this is how I woke up. He looked at his right hand, which was covered with cracks, like a stone that had been weathered for thousands of years. The doctor said it's a skin condition. I know it isn't. Hammer looked at those hands and saw the price of petrification. With each use of his power, his body would transform a little more into stone. His skin hardened, his joints became brittle, and his blood vessels turned into stone veins. One day, he would begin from his feet, slowly turning into a stone statue. Not death, but solidification. His consciousness remained, but his body could no longer move. You know what? The statue suddenly said. I used to be a sculptor. Iron Hammer paused for a moment. The stone statue smiled, a bitter smile on its stone-dusted face. I've sculpted many people from stone. Heroes, gods, monuments. Then I myself turned to stone, and realized that stone doesn't feel pain, but the process of becoming stone does. He became a construction worker on the walls of the Free City. He worked 8 hours a day, his arm putrefying every hour, coughing up a handful of stone dust each time. The walls he built were stronger than others because every stone had been touched by his hands, and every crevice was filled with his blood and sweat. One day, Lin Yuan came to see him at the construction site and asked him a question. Why did you come here? The stone statue thought for a moment and said, because here, I am not a monster. Where else? Otherwise, I'm a stone skin patient, a power-affected individual, something needing purification. He patted the city wall, his petrified arm making a dull thud. Here, I'm just a bricklayer. No different from before on the construction site. Lin Yuan looked at him and remained silent. The statue then said, do you know why I like building walls? Why? Because the wall doesn't judge you. A wall is a wall, a stone is a stone. You pile them up, and they're there. You don't need to pray, you don't need to offer sacrifices, and you don't need to worry about the day the gods are displeased and turn you into a pile of minced meat. He pointed to the city wall. This wall is the most honest work I've ever done. 3. Candles. When the candle arrived, no one noticed her. She was so old as a rag forgotten in a corner. Her back was hunched, she needed a cane to walk, and she had to stop and catch her breath every 3 steps. She wore a faded cotton-padded jacket, with frayed cuffs and patches on the collar. She was carrying a kerosene lamp. The lamp was old, its glass shade cracked and its base rusted. But it was lit. A small flame flickered on the wick, its orange light starkly bright against the grayness of the ruins. She walked to the communal kitchen that was under construction, hung the kerosene lamp on the beam, and then sat on a stone next to it, watching the fire. Someone asked her, Grandma, what are you doing here? She said, cook. The man laughed, there isn't even a pot here. She pulled an iron pot from her bosom. Not from her backpack, but from her bosom, as if by magic. The pot was bigger than her, but she lifted it with one hand and placed it on the makeshift stove. Then she said to the kerosene lamp, bigger. The flames doubled in height. She added, a little bigger. The flames doubled in size, growing to the size of a fist, and heated the iron pot until it was glowing red hot. She said, okay, that's the right heat. This is the best heat for stewing meat. Her ability is to keep flames burning. Not to start fires, not to control fires, but simply to keep them burning. As long as she watches a flame, it will not go out, regardless of wind or rain, regardless of when the fuel runs out. She can keep a candle burning for 10 years, 20 years, until the day she closes her eyes. The price is body temperature. Every time she uses her power, her body temperature drops by 1 degree Celsius. It's not the kind of feeling cold, but a real, physical drop in body temperature. She can feel cold even wearing a cotton-padded coat in the middle of summer, and she can shiver while warming herself by a fire. Her body temperature remained below 35 degrees Celsius year-round. In winter, her fingers turned bluish-purple, and her lips were grayish-white, like a corpse that wasn't quite dead yet. She didn't care. She said, I've lived for 76 years, married, had children, and been a widow. After the Great Rift, everyone said it was divine punishment, that we had to kneel, worship, and offer everything. I said, bullshit. I don't know about divine punishment, but people need to eat. To eat, we need to light a fire, and to light a fire, someone has to watch it. I watch the fire, and you eat. She became the chef of the free city. Every day from morning till night, she tended the pot, stewing vegetables, making soup, and baking bread. Her skills were average, but everyone ate with relish because it was hot. In this cold world, warmth itself is a form of faith. One day, Sumuking came to the kitchen and saw Zhu dozing in front of the stove. The flame was still flickering, but Zhu's body was trembling and his lips were purple. Sumuking took off her cloak and draped it over her shoulders. Candle opened her eyes, glanced at her, and smiled. You're the holy maiden of the Lord of Light, aren't you? You exude the aura of divine magic. Sumuking said, it used to be. The candle said, then do you know why I don't go to the Church of Radiance? Their sacred fire never goes out, much better than mine. Sumuking shook her head. The candle said, because their fire costs money. My fire costs nothing. She pointed to the kerosene lamp. I've had this lamp for 40 years. When my husband died, this was the only lamp left to keep me company. On the day of the Great Rift, the lamp went out. I cried for 3 days, and then it lit up again by itself. Since then, it has never gone out again. She looked at Sumuking, a glimmer of light appearing in her cloudy eyes. Girl, do you think this is a miracle? Sumuking thought for a moment. I think it's because you don't want it to go out. The candle smiled. Yes. I don't want it to go out. It's that simple. 400 or 500 people. The population of the free city is growing every day. On the 37th day, the number of participants exceeded 100. On the 52nd day, the number of participants exceeded 200. On the 78th day, the number of participants exceeded 300. On the 105th day, we surpassed 500 people. 500 people abandoned by the world built a city abandoned by the world. Among them is a retired soldier who lost a leg and used mythical energy to create a prosthetic leg that allows him to walk, a blind girl who can use echolocation to see the outline of the entire city, an artist with trembling hands who can paint with blood, and the things he paints move on the paper, and a former oracle who was hunted down by the church, whose abilities were taken back by the gods and turned him into an ordinary person, but who learned to grow vegetables in the free city. Their abilities often come with severe side effects. An incomplete awakening, like a sentence the creator abandoned halfway through writing. But they learned to coexist with these side effects, to find a way to live amidst suffering. Lin Yuan stood on the city wall, looking at the city that had grown from the ruins. Sumuking stood beside him, holding the writer's pen in her hand. She didn't use any magic, nor did she pray. She simply stood quietly, like an ordinary person. What are you thinking about? She asked. Lin Yuan said, I'm wondering what the gods would think if they saw this city. Sumuking said, they won't look at it. In their eyes, this is just a bunch of bugs. Bug. It's something that shouldn't exist. She looked at the city lights, the kerosene lamp in the center burning like an inextinguishable heart. The world of the gods is a perfect script, with a beginning, development, climax, and ending. But here there's no script, no beginning, development, climax, or ending. Here, there's only a group of people who don't want to live according to the script. Lin Yuan remained silent for a long time. Then he said, let's treat it as a bug. Let's treat it until they can't delete it anymore. In the distance, Echo was helping a child who couldn't speak to replicate his voice. The child's voice was as clear as a bell. After Echo finished replicating it, his throat was hoarse, but he smiled. The stone statue was still being built. His right arm had completely turned to stone, and the stone was spreading towards his left shoulder. He knew he would one day become a stone statue, but he didn't care. At the very top of the wall, he carved a line of words, stone statue, built here. A pot of soup simmered in the candlelight, its aroma filling the entire city. Her body temperature had dropped to 33 degrees Celsius, she was shivering even wrapped in 3 quilts, but her eyes shone as she looked at the fire. 500 people. 500 people abandoned by the world. 500 bugs. 500 people who refused to kneel. Lin Yuan jumped down from the city wall, landing on the ground and kicking up a cloud of dust. Let's go, he said. Where to? Sumuking asked. Go tell those still on their way, there is a city here. He glanced back at her, a slight smile playing on his lips. A city without gods. From the distant ruins, several dark figures were moving towards this location. The lights of the City of Freedom shine in the darkness. Construction progress, 95%. Iron Hammer stood at the city gate, using a robotic arm to carve the number onto the wooden board. After finishing the last stroke, he stepped back 2 paces, tilting his head to look at it for a long time. Almost there, he said. Echo stood behind him, a newly changed strip of cloth wrapped around his neck. Yesterday, he had helped a child replicate his mother's voice. The child hadn't heard his mother speak since the Great Rift. After Echo finished replicating it, the child cried, and Echo cried too. Then his throat remained hoarse for 3 days. But before he lost his voice, he uttered his last words, Iron Hammer, carve a message for me on the city gate. Hammer asked, what did you say? Echo opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He took out paper and pen and wrote a line. Iron Hammer stared at the words for a moment in silence, then picked up his chisel and began carving on the stone pillar to the left of the city gate. Stone chips flew everywhere. 15 minutes later, the carving was finished. Those who come in are free, and those who leave are free. Echo looked at the words and smiled. School paintings. The school in the City of Freedom was a bungalow built from ruins and bricks. The roof was made of corrugated iron, the windows were covered with plastic sheeting, and the desks were wooden planks placed on stones. There was no electricity, no lights. During the day, they relied on natural light, and at night, they relied on a kerosene lamp lit by candlelight. The school has only one teacher and one student. The teacher is a white deer. There are 12 students. There were 12 children, the oldest being 13 and the youngest 4. They were all supernatural beings, or rather, children who were awakening to become supernatural beings. Some children could make objects around them float in their sleep, some children's tears would turn into ice crystals when they cried, and some children could occasionally hear sounds that others could not hear. They are not accepted elsewhere. The Church of True God calls them corrupted souls, followers of evil gods call them unfinished sacrifices, and refuges for ordinary people drive them out as monsters. So they came to the City of Freedom. Bai Lu cannot speak. She is not mute, but rather afraid to speak. Her voice contains a spatial rift. Each time she opens her mouth, the air subtly distorts, like a stone thrown into still water. She once accidentally uttered a word that tore a crack in the wall in front of her, so she chose to remain silent. But children need to speak, need to hear, and need to know that the world is not just about fear and rejection. The white deer was taught using picture books. She has a thick sketchbook, bound together from recycled paper. Every page is filled with her own drawings. The drawings depict the sun, moon, stars, trees, rivers, houses, and people. On the first day of class, she opened the sketchbook to the first page and pointed it out to the children. The picture shows a round, golden object radiating light. Below it, in crooked handwriting, is the word, Sunday. The youngest child, 4-year-old Dodo, stared at the picture for a long time, then raised her hand and pointed out the window. Teacher, the sun is outside. The white deer nodded and wrote in the sketchbook, yes. The sun is outside. The sun is big, bright, and warm. Dodo asked again, then what is the sun? Bai Lu thought for a moment, then drew a small figure standing in the sun. The figure's shadow stretched long. Below it read, the sun is what makes people see shadows. The children didn't quite understand, but they all remembered it. The second page shows the moon. The third page shows stars. The fourth page shows trees. The fifth page shows a river. The sixth page shows houses. On page 10, the drawing depicts a person. Bai Lu painted many, many people. Some were tall, some were short, some were fat, some were thin, some were young, and some were old. Everyone was different, and everyone had a smile painted on their face. She wrote person below the painting. A child named Zayasha raised his hand and asked, Teacher, am I a person too? The white deer looked at him. The child was 7 years old. His left hand was a size larger than his right. His left palm had bark-like patterns, and his fingernails were green, like tender buds. She nodded and wrote in her sketchbook, You are a person. The little tree asked again, Then why do other places say I'm not human? Bai Lu paused for a moment. She thought for a long time, then wrote a line in her sketchbook, each character written slowly and with great effort. Because people in other places don't know what a human being is. The children didn't understand the meaning of the sentence, but they remembered it. In the days that followed, Bai Lu's sketchbook grew thicker and thicker. She began to draw the people of the City of Freedom. Hammers were hammering iron, candles were cooking, echoes were carrying sound, stone statues were building walls, Lin Yuan stood on the city wall, and Somuking was bandaging people in the clinic. She drew one after another, capturing everyone who came to the City of Freedom in her sketchbook. The number of people in the paintings increased, the sketchbook grew thicker, and her smiles became more frequent. One day, Zayasha pointed to a page in the picture book and asked, Teacher, who is this person? Bai Lu glanced at it. The page depicted a girl with 2 braids, holding a balloon, and smiling happily. That was Bai Lu herself. It was her imagined self, a self that could talk, laugh, and not be trapped by fear. She wrote next to the painting, a friend. The little tree said, She's very pretty. The white deer lowered its head, closed the sketchbook, and hugged it to its chest. That night, she drew a new picture on the last page of her sketchbook. It was a panoramic view of the City of Freedom, the walls, houses, schools, kitchens, workshops, clinics, and countless tiny people, standing densely packed together. A line of text was written below the painting. City of Freedom, us. The white walls of the medical clinic. The day Somuking took over the medical clinic, it was completely empty. There was no medicine, no bandages, no scalpel, not even a bed. Only drafty walls and a patch of muddy ground. She spent 3 days scavenging everything usable from the ruins, half a box of unexpired anti-inflammatory drugs, a roll of yellowed bandages, a rusty scalpel, which she spent 2 hours sharpening, and 3 barely intact cots. She polished the scalpel until it reflected a mirror, folded the bandages neatly, and arranged the medicines according to their uses. Then she wrote a few lines on the wall with charcoal. Fever, antipyretics, 3 times a day. External injury, cleaning, bandaging, observation. Side effects of the ability, rest, keep warm, drink plenty of water. If you feel unwell, come see me anytime. Don't try to tough it out. She was the only person here with medical knowledge. A former saint of the Radiant Church, she had learned divine healing in the temple, as well as basic modern medicine. Divine healing could heal wounds, but not pain. Medicine could alleviate symptoms, but not fear. She combined the two, using the limited resources she had to try her best to make everyone feel a little better. Most of the patients who come here have side effects from their abilities. The stone statue came every 3 days, its cough worsening, expelling more and more stone dust. Sumuking prescribed it lung-soothing herbs, wild herbs she found in the ruins, and told it to reduce the frequency of its abilities. The stone statue shook its head. The city wall isn't finished yet. Sumuking said, once it's finished, you'll become a real stone statue. The stone statue smiled, that's fine too, then I won't need to buy a burial plot. Echo came every few days, his throat so swollen he couldn't speak. Sumuking made him pear soup. The pears were picked from the ruins, half rotten, the good parts were cut off and boiled, and told him to hold them in his mouth and swallow slowly. After finishing the pear soup, Echo wrote on a piece of paper, sweet. Sumuking said, there will be more next time you come. Zhu came the least, but her condition was the most serious. Her temperature had dropped to 32 degrees Celsius, and her pulse was so weak it was almost undetectable. Sumuking gave her all the quilts and even put a layer of dry straw under her bed. Zhu said, no need for that trouble. These old bones of mine, if I die, I die. Sumuking squatted down, took her hand, and said, you can't die. Your fire can't go out. Zhu looked at the kerosene lamp, remained silent for a long time, and then said, then I won't die. And then there are the newly arrived supernatural beings, each with their own set of problems. Some have eyes that emit a blinding light, making it impossible to look directly at anything. Some have skin that secretes a corrosive liquid, making it impossible to touch anyone. Some enter the dreams of others while they sleep, unable to have their own dreams. Sumuking examined each patient one by one and treated them one by one. For those she couldn't cure, she stayed with them. For those she couldn't stay with, she listened. One evening, Lin Yuan came to the clinic and saw Sumuking asleep against the wall. Beside her was a diary, and on the open page was a line of text. A girl came today. Her power is to make those she touches feel warm, but she herself is always cold. I gave her my cloak. She's still cold. I don't know what to do. Lin Yuan squatted down, closed the diary, and placed it beside her. Then he took off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. Sumuking didn't wake up, but her brows relaxed. The pulse of the city of freedom has begun to find its own rhythm. At dawn, the first wisp of smoke rose from the chimney, its aroma wafting over the city walls and waking everyone. In the morning, the sound of hammering came from the workshop of the iron hammer. The stone statue was laying the last few stones on the city wall. The echoes carried the news in every corner. Bai Lu opened her sketchbook at school. At noon, everyone gathered in the open space in front of the kitchen to eat. The food was simple, mostly wild vegetable porridge, flat bread, and occasionally meat, canned food salvaged from the ruins. But everyone ate very attentively, because they knew that this food was obtained by Zhu with his body heat. In the afternoon, some people went to the ruins to collect supplies, some repaired houses, and some planted vegetables in the open space. The seeds were found in an abandoned farmer's market. Children played and chased each other under the city wall, their laughter carrying far. As evening fell, a candle hung a kerosene lamp on the tallest pillar, its orange light enveloping the entire city. Everyone stopped and looked at the lamp. The light wasn't harsh, but warm, like someone holding a torch in the darkness, saying, this way. Late at night, Lin Yuan stood alone on the city wall, looking at the city that had grown from ruins. He looked at the cracks in the city wall. The stone statues would be repaired tomorrow. He looked at the window of the clinic. Sumuking's light was still on. He looked at the roof of the school. Bai Lu's sketchbook was still spread out on the table. He looked at the chimney of the workshop. The hammer was still polishing something. He looked at the firelight in the kitchen. The candle, wrapped in 3 quilts, was dozing. He recalled Chen Mo's words, your city isn't finished yet. It's almost finished now. But he also recalled Chen Shi's voice, the voice from a higher dimension he'd heard in the Tower of Babel instance. The city is built, and then what? And then live. What's the point of living? We live and await the truth. What is the truth? I don't know. But someone has to go and look for it. He took the diary out of his pocket. The pages Sumuking had written were still there, the handwriting neat and tidy, every stroke carefully written. He turned to the last page, which was blank. He took out his writer's pen and wrote a single word on his palm. Home. The black writing lingered on the skin for 3 seconds, then disappeared, as if it had never existed. But he remembered it. He remembered everything, the feel of the pen tip gliding across his palm, the coolness of the ink, the shape of the writing, and how quickly it disappeared. He put the diary back in his pocket, tucked the writer's pen back into its leather sheath at his waist, and then looked up at the distant ruins. There are many more people trudging through the darkness, struggling in fear, and waiting in despair for a place to settle down. He took a deep breath and spoke a sentence to the void. Not to anyone in particular, just something he wanted to say. Wait a little longer. It'll be finished soon. In the distance, a faint light appeared from the ruins. Someone was carrying a lantern and walking towards the city of freedom. For 100%. Construction progress, 100%. It was raining when the hammer carved that number into the city gate. It wasn't a torrential downpour like the Great Rift that tears the sky apart, but a gentle, fine rain, as if the sky were whispering. The raindrops fell on the city walls, on the houses, on the tin roof of the school, making a rustling sound. After carving the last stroke with the hammer, he put the chisel aside and touched the number with his hand. 100%. He remembered when he first arrived, all that remained was a pile of ruins and a wall that hadn't even completely collapsed. Lin Yuan stood on the ruins and said to him, I want to build a city. He thought he was insane. Build a city in this god-forsaken place? The gods could smash everything to pieces with a single slap, what's the point? But now, the city has been built. The city walls are 5 meters high and 1 meter thick, entirely constructed of granite laid by the stone statues themselves. The city gates, weighing 2 tons, were cast from steel bars smelted from the ruins by iron hammer, but White Deer can create a portal in them, allowing entry and exit without pushing the door open. There are 40 living quarters, each housing 4 people, though crowded, each person has a bed. The medical facility has 6 cots, a medicine cabinet, and an operating table. The school has 1 classroom, 1 sketchbook, and 12 children. The kitchen has an iron pot, a kerosene lamp, and a fire that never goes out. The workshop has a furnace, a bellows, an anvil, and a hammer that is always striking. There's also a square. The square, located in the very center of the city, is a circular open space paved with stone slabs. These slabs were carved out piece by piece from the ruins, each with its edges smoothed and laid out neatly. In the very center of the square stands a stone pillar, with a kerosene lamp holding a candle atop it. That is the heart of the City of Freedom. Every evening, everyone gathers in the square. Some sit, some stand, some lean against the wall, and some lie on the ground. No one speaks, they simply watch the lamp in silence. The lights are on. That's enough. The rain has stopped. Iron Hammer leaped down from the city gate, his mechanical legs landing on the ground, splashing up mud. He turned to look into the city, at the people bustling about in the rain. Zhu added firewood to the fire in the kitchen, and the flames leaped even higher. Sumuking was collecting the drying bandages at the entrance of the clinic. Bai Lu was tidying up her sketchbooks at school. The children had already left. Echo squatted under the eaves, a damp strip of cloth wrapped around her neck, listening to the rain. The stone statue sat at the foot of the city wall, its right arm completely turned to stone, and gray lines beginning to appear on its left arm. It was carving something on a stone slab with its left hand. Iron Hammer walked over and saw a line of text. The stone statue was erected here. Below is a line of smaller text. First wall of the City of Freedom, builder, stone statue. Materials, stone, blood, life. Hammer sat down next to him and asked, does it hurt? The stone statue smiled, a stiff smile on its face covered in stone dust. It doesn't hurt anymore. Stones don't feel pain. Hammer was silent for a moment, then patted his shoulder with his mechanical arm. The metal struck the stone with a crisp sound. You are a human being, Hammer said. The statue looked at him. You're not the first person to say that. I'm the first person to hit you with an iron hand. The stone statue smiled, and this time the smile seemed more genuine. Lin Yuan stood atop the tallest ruin. It was the highest point in the City of Freedom, offering a panoramic view of the entire city. He looked at the city wall, complete, closed, the city wall that surrounded everyone in the middle. He looked at the houses, one after another, some with leaky roofs, but someone would fix them tomorrow. He looked at the school, a sliver of light shone through the windows, and Bai Lu was still drawing in her sketchbook. He looked at the clinic, Sumuking's light was still on, she hadn't gone to sleep yet. He looked at the workshop, the hammer was still striking something, and sparks flew out of the chimney. He looked into the kitchen, where a candle, wrapped in a quilt, was dozing, while the lamp shone like an inextinguishable sun. He looked at the square, which was empty, but everyone would gather there tomorrow. The city was built. It is not a ruin, not a pile of rubble, not a temporary shelter. It is a city. There are walls, houses, schools, hospitals, kitchens, workshops, squares, lights, and people. 500 people. He closed his eyes, feeling the wind brush against his cheeks. The wind carried the sense of earth after the rain, the smell of cooking fires in the kitchen, the rusty smell of the hammer workshop, and the ink and paper of his school sketchbooks. He opened his eyes and looked at the distant horizon. There lay ruins, darkness, a mist of mythical energy, gods whose allegiance was unknown, and truths whose reality was uncertain. The city was built. But building a city is not the end. It's the starting point. He took the diary out of his pocket and turned to the last page, which was still blank. He picked up the writer's pen and wrote a line on that page. City of Freedom. We live. We wait. The writing lingered for 5 seconds. 2 seconds longer than last time. Then it disappeared. But he remembered it. The news spread faster than anyone expected. At first, it was just a few scattered caravans. They came from the ash plains in the north, bypassing the checkpoints of the Church of the Radiant, crossing the edge of the hunting grounds of the Thousand-Throat Beast Order, taking an old road that no one wanted to travel, just to catch a glimpse of this city that was said to have no god. Then they went back. When they returned, they spoke. They spoke in the taverns, in the marketplace, and in hushed tones during prayer breaks at church. They said that the city had no idols, no altars, no morning or evening prayer bells. They said the people there did not kneel. They said there was an unseen woman who healed people with her hands. They said there was a man who held a pen in his hand, a pen that had killed God. The more it was mentioned, the more its name spread. The City of Freedom. It started as a rumor. Then it became a legend. And then it became a problem. A city without a god, a group of unchosen people, a rewriter who dares to defy the church. These things combined gradually became a thorn in the side of the mythical earth. Fine, but deeply embedded. The Church of Radiance was the first to react. The third detachment of the Knights of Judgment set up camp at an old outpost 40 miles from the capital of Freedom. They neither attacked nor declared war, they simply encamped. The white tents stood in neat rows on the gray-yellow plain, like a row of teeth. Every morning, the sound of hymns rises from the outpost. The hymns drift across the wilderness, up to the walls of the City of Freedom, and into the ears of those who rise early to work. No one was afraid. But no one pretended not to hear. "They're reminding us," the old blacksmith said, squatting at the foot of the city wall, sharpening his knife without looking up, "that they're watching." Someone asked, "Then why don't they attack?" The old blacksmith flipped the knife over. The sound of the whetstone rubbing against the blade was thin and drawn out. "Because they're unsure." "Unsure about what?" "I'm not sure if we can win." He raised the knife and examined the blade against the light. Lin Yuan's pen killed a god. They remember. The second to arrive was the Thousand-Throat Beast's order. They weren't stationed there. They were infiltrating. The first group to sneak in were 3 men dressed as hunters. They spoke with a northern accent and said they were there to sell animal hides. The guards let them into the city, but some noticed they slept during the day and wandered around at night. On the third night, they were discovered in an abandoned textile factory in the north of the city. It wasn't discovered by the patrol team. It was found by a child who was out looking for his cat in the middle of the night. The child ran home and told his mother. His mother banged on the tin bucket. The lights came on all over the street. When the 3 men were cornered in the textile factory, they were drawing something on the wall. Later, Lin Yuan arrived and glanced at the pattern on the wall. It was a ring made up of countless mouths, the lines twisted, as if they were alive. The mark of 1,000 throats. He scraped the plaster off the wall and burned it. The 3 men were led to the city gate. No one laid a hand on them, they simply stood and watched. The old blacksmith stuck the freshly sharpened knife into the doorframe. "Go back and tell your gods," he said, "this is not a hunting ground. This is a place where people live." The 3 people left. They didn't look back. The ashes on the wall were scattered by the wind. The next day, the old blacksmith hung a lamp on the charred wall. He said, "If the light isn't bright enough, someone has to add some." The third group to arrive was the Golden Scales Church. They arrived in the most respectable manner. A black carriage, 2 gray horses, and an envoy in a dark gold robe. He stood at the city gate, a smile on his face, holding a scroll of parchment. When the guard stopped him, he bowed slightly, his movements as precise as if he had measured the angle. "I'm a businessman," he said, "not a soldier. I only talk business." Sumuking heard his footsteps from the city gate all the way to the stone house where the council was held. She said, "This man's heartbeat is 3 beats slower than normal." Lin Yuan asked her what she meant. She said, "Either he's afraid of nothing, or he doesn't care about anything. Neither is human." The envoy sat in the stone house, spreading out a parchment covered with densely written terms. "The Church of the Golden Balance is willing to recognize the independence of the Free City. The condition is that the Free City open trade routes, allow the Golden Balance caravans to establish a trading post within the city, and pay 10% of the total annual revenue as protection money." Even as the envoy uttered the words protection fee, he still wore a smile. Lin Yuan didn't look at the parchment. He asked, "What is the name of your god?" The envoy's smile paused for a moment. "The god of the golden scales. Is he fair?" "Absolutely fair." "Then why don't you pay me instead of him paying you?" The envoy was silent for a moment. His heartbeat changed. Sumuking later said that in those few seconds, she heard his heartbeat quicken twice. It wasn't fear. It was anger. But he suppressed it. "Mr. Lin," the envoy said, "you have a very powerful pen. But a pen can only write, it cannot sustain a city. You're wrong." Lin Yuan stood up. "You haven't seen what this pen can write yet." The envoy departed. As the carriage drove out of the city gate, the wheels rolled over the gravel, the sound fading into the distance. Sumuking stood on the city wall, her face turned towards the direction the carriage had gone. "He will come again," she said. "I know. Next time he'll bring more people. He's not a businessman." Lin Yuan remained silent. Sumuking turned her head. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking we should put up a monument at the city gate." He made the move on the 5th day. A piece of uncarved, bluish-gray stone, about the height of a person and half a person's width, was brought from the quarry. The old blacksmith asked him what he planned to carve. Lin Yuan placed the stone inside the city gate, facing the main street. Everyone entering the city would see it. Everyone leaving the city would turn around. He took out the silver-gray pen. The pen tip rests against the stone surface. When the first stroke landed, the stone made a very low sound. It wasn't cracking, but rather like a person letting out a long breath. Stone chips flew everywhere. He wrote the first line. A crowd gradually gathered. No one spoke. Only the sound of a pen tip tracing the stone surface, fine and continuous, like rain falling on tiles. Sumuking stood at the front of the crowd. She couldn't see the words on the monument, but she could hear the direction of each stroke. The lines were clean, direct, without any unnecessary curves. Like a knife. Lin Yuan wrote for a long time. After writing the last word, he put away his pen and took a step back. The steel has 6 characters inscribed on it. There are no gods, only men. The crowd was silent for a few seconds. Then the old blacksmith clapped. Then the second person. The third. The applause started at the city gate, spreading along the main street, all the way to the end of the city wall, to the edge of the ruins, and to the tent where the child with the broken leg was recuperating. Samukang placed her hand on the stone tablet. Her fingertips traced the engravings, the texture of the stone, the depth of the strokes, the shape of each character. She touched them slowly, as if reading a very thick book. When she touched the last word, her hand stopped. How long did it take you to carve these 6 characters? She said. Lin Yuan thought for a moment. The time it takes to smoke a cigarette. I mean, how long did you write? Lin Yuan remained silent. Samukang smiled. She withdrew her hand from the stone tablet and let it hang at her side. It's very well carved, she said. Every stroke is perfect. A few days later, a merchant who had fled from the north stood at the city gate and read the inscription on the steel. His clothes were tattered, the carriage was reduced to a frame, and the horse was so thin that its ribs were clearly visible. His face bore the marks of smoke, and the ring finger of his left hand was missing a section. A guard handed him a bowl of water, and his hand trembled as he took it. People outside call you free-spirited lunatics, he said. Lin Yuan stood opposite him. I know. They say you have no god, no protection, and will perish sooner or later. Lin Yuan looked at him. Then why did you come? The merchant finished drinking the water in the bowl and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Because I am outside, protected by God. He paused for a moment. But they die every day. He returned the bowl to the guard. There is no God here. His gaze passed over the forest, over the city walls, over the ruins, and looked into the depths of the city. Smoke was rising from chimneys. Some people were repairing roofs, some were chopping wood, and children were chasing a lame dog across the street. But I'm still alive. He said this in a very flat voice. It wasn't gratitude, nor relief. It was a statement. Lin Yuan turned to the side. Let's go into town. The merchant led his thin horse past the stone tablet. As he passed, he reached out and touched the surface of the tablet. The 6 characters were warm from the sun. He didn't turn around. The city gate stood open behind him. The wind blew in from the wilderness, carrying the scent of dust and hay. Sentinels were changing shifts on the city wall, their shadows flickering on the monument. The old blacksmith squatted by the city gate, tapping his pipe against the sole of his shoe. 6 words, he said, is that enough? Lin Yuan stood beside him, looking at the stone tablet. That's enough. The old blacksmith put his pipe back in his mouth. I think that's enough. In the distant wilderness, the white tents of the Church of Radiance turned a dark gold in the setting sun. The hunting grounds of the thousand-throat beast order disappeared below the horizon. The trade route of the golden scale stretched into the unseen world. 3 forces. 3 perspectives. They were all looking at the city. But the people in the city are making dinner. This is the city of freedom. It is neither a righteous god nor an evil god. It's a person. The stone tablet stood at the city gate, its bluish-gray stone surface warmed by the setting sun. 6 characters. There are no gods, only humans. The prosperity of the free city came faster than anyone had anticipated. In the 3rd month, all the rooftops in the city were repaired. In the 5th month, the market opened. In the 8th month, caravans from the south brought seeds and farming tools, and the wasteland in the north of the city was reclaimed and planted with the first crop of winter wheat. By the end of the 1st year, the city of freedom no longer resembled a ruin. It's like a city. Some people opened blacksmith shops, some opened tailor shops, and some opened taverns. The tavern had no name, and the owner was a woman who had fled from the east, with a scar on the left side of her face running from her cheekbone to her chin. She said she used to run 3 taverns in the territory of the Golden Balance, but then the balance tipped, and her shops disappeared. Won't the scales here tip over? Someone asked her. She poured the first glass of wine in front of the man. There are no scales here. What's wrong with that? There's wine. Everyone laughed. After laughing, they drank. After drinking, they went home. During that period, there was a lot of laughter in the city. But not all sounds are laughter. The first theft occurred in the 3rd week after the start of winter. The woman who was robbed was from the Ash Plains. She had brought all her belongings with her 2 sacks of wheat seeds, a bag of salt, and a silver comb. The silver comb wasn't worth much, it was left to her by her mother. The next morning, the comb was gone. She cried all morning by the well in the north of the city. No one knew how to comfort her. Someone gave her a bag of wheat seeds, someone offered to help her find them. But freedom had no guards, no judges, no rules. Who would govern? How would they govern? The Red Queen found the thief on the 4th day. The thief was a boy of 16 or 17 who had escaped from the edge of the thousand-throat beast order's hunting grounds. He had hidden the silver comb in a crack in the city wall and hadn't had a chance to sell it yet. The Red Queen carried him to the middle of the market like a chick. A crowd gathered around. The Red Queen walked through the crowd and stood before Lin Yuan. Her long red hair billowed like a flag in the winter wind. We caught them, she said. Lin Yuan stood up from the stone steps. How many? Just 1 child. She threw him to the ground. The boy curled up in a ball, not speaking, not looking up, the grime on his neck as thick as a layer of skin. The Red Queen looked at Lin Yuan. What should we do? Lin Yuan remained silent for a few seconds. Follow the rules of the free city. The Red Queen did not move. Her eyes were dark red, appearing almost black in the overcast sky. What are the rules in the city of freedom? Lin Yuan was stunned. The wind swept through the middle of the market, lifting a tattered cloth from the ground and hanging it on the eaves of a nearby house. No one picked it up. Everyone was watching Lin Yuan. He opened his mouth. There was no sound. The Red Queen pulled the boy up from the ground. The boy stumbled, his knee hitting the stone with a dull thud. You heard that, said the Red Queen, her voice low but every word clear. He doesn't know either. The crowd began to whisper. The woman who had thrown the comb stood at the very edge of the crowd, her hands clasped together. She opened her mouth several times, but finally only managed to say one sentence, "Don't hit him." The Red Queen glanced at her. "I don't plan to fight." She dragged the boy to the back of the stone house and locked him in an empty storage room. The lock was just a piece of wire, barely enough to hold anything in place. That evening, Hammer sat at the door of the stone house, writing on the ground with his mechanical arm. His characters are large, each stroke deliberate, with the mechanical joints making a subtle grinding sound. Rules. After he finished writing, he looked up at the white deer. Bai Lu squatted beside him, holding her ever-present sketchbook. She had drawn a balance scale on it with charcoal. The scales are tilted. Left is higher than right. She wrote one word next to it, fair. The question mark was drawn very large, almost as big as the letter itself. Hammer looked at it, then retracted the robotic arm. After a while, it extended again and added a line of text to the ground. God has rules. We don't. Bai Lu stared at those 2 lines of text for a long time. Then she turned to a new page and drew a person. No facial features, no clothes, no distinguishing characteristics. Just an outline. She drew a line under the person. Another line was drawn. The 2 lines are parallel. She did not write anything, but Hammer understood. On the 3rd day, Lin Yuan summoned everyone. It's not an order, it's a request. The sledgehammer struck the sheet metal door, one shop after another. The Red Queen stood on the city wall and shouted twice. The old blacksmith extinguished the furnace and locked the shop. The tavern owner poured the last glass of wine, took off her apron, and draped it over the back of her chair. People emerged from every street, every house, and every corner, heading towards the stone tablet inside the city gate. 6 characters are engraved on the stone tablet. There are no gods, only humans. Lin Yuan stood in front of the stone tablet. A crowd gathered from all directions, forming a circle in front of the stone tablet. Some stood, some squatted, and some sat on the steps of the city wall. The child with the broken leg was held by his mother, who clutched a dry biscuit in his hand. The woman who had lost her comb stood at the back row. The silver comb had been found, but she still clutched it tightly in her hand. The voices gradually quieted down. Lin Yuan spoke. Do all free places need rules? No one spoke. The wind blew in from outside the city gate, swept past the stone tablet, and lifted the hem of several people's clothes. Some say yes, Lin Yuan said calmly, some say no. Rules are another kind of god. We escaped, not to find another one. Some people in the crowd nodded. But the Red Queen asked me a question. She said, what are the rules of the free city? He paused for a moment. I can't answer that. Because I haven't thought about it. Silence spread. Then a young man stood up. He was in his early 20s, with undeveloped features on his face, and his clothes were stained with rust. He was the old blacksmith's apprentice. No rules needed, he said. Might makes right. The old blacksmith turned around and glanced at him. Say it again. The apprentice shrank back slightly, but didn't sit down. I said, are your fists big? The old blacksmith interrupted him. The apprentice remained silent. Shut up if you're not big enough. The apprentice sat down. A few scattered voices of agreement rose from the crowd. Yes, we don't need that. Rules are gods. We don't need gods. Then an old man stood up. His back was hunched, his hair was mostly white, and the index and middle fingers of his right hand were missing old wounds, healed roughly. He was among the first to escape from the territory of the Radiant Church, arriving barely alive. Sumuking stayed by his side for 2 days and 2 nights. When he stood up, someone next to him helped him up. There are no rules, he said, his voice not loud but clear enough. The strong bully the weak. His gaze slowly swept across the crowd. These 2 fingers of mine were lost on the grounds of the Radiant Church. They weren't cut off by the church. They were cut off by another refugee. He wanted my provisions, and when I refused, he chopped them off. The church people stood by and watched, saying, God doesn't interfere in human conflicts. He raised his mutilated hand. We escaped not to be bullied by our own people. The crowd fell silent. That quiet wasn't silence. Something was sinking down, sinking into everyone's chest. The old blacksmith knocked out his pipe. Vote. Everyone was watching him. Since there is no God, then listen to the people. The more people, the better. He stood up, walked to the stone tablet, and took a piece of chalk from his pocket. He drew a vertical line on the city wall brick next to the stone tablet. To the left of this line, no rules are needed. He then drew another vertical line, 2 steps away. The right side of this line is needed. There was an open space between the 2 lines. Go stand there. A stir ran through the crowd. Then the first person moved. It was the woman who had lost the comb. Holding the silver comb, she walked to the outside of the right-hand line, turned around, and faced everyone. The second to move was the tavern owner. She walked to the right, stood next to the woman, rolled up her sleeves, revealing an old scar on her left arm. People began to move around. Left, right, left, right. The old blacksmith's apprentice hesitated for a long time. He glanced at the sparse crowd on his left, then at the increasingly dense crowd on his right. Finally, he stood up and walked to the right. The old blacksmith didn't look at him, but the smoke coming out of his pipe flickered slightly. The last one to stand up was the Red Queen. She sat on the steps of the city wall, her long legs stretched out, twirling a dagger in her hand. She looked to the left, then to the right. Then she walked to the stone tablet. "I'm not standing," she said. "I just wanted to ask." She turned around and faced the crowd. "What is the first rule?" The crowd fell silent again. But this time, it wasn't a sinking silence, it was a rising silence, like water being parted by the wind. Some said, "I won't steal." Some said, "I won't kill." Some said, "I won't lie." The voices grew louder and louder, overlapping each other, making it difficult to hear clearly. Finally, the old man with the missing finger raised his hand. The voices faded away. "Don't hurt others," he said. There was silence for a few seconds. Then the people nodding came in waves, row after row, from front to back. Lin Yuan walked over from the city wall and stood in front of the stone tablet. He took out the silver gray pen. The pen tip rests on the blank space below the stone tablet. As he wrote, the entire city fell silent. The sound of the pen gliding across the stone was delicate and lingering, just like when he first carved the inscription. But this time, the sound was slower and heavier. He wrote 5 characters. "Do not harm others." After writing the last word, he put his pen away. Article 1. The crowd didn't applaud. It wasn't the kind of moment that warranted applause. They were simply looking at those 5 words. Looking at them intently, as if they were looking at something they had made themselves. The sky darkened. The crowd dispersed. Everyone went home. The Red Queen released the boy who had stolen the comb from the storeroom. The boy stood in the doorway, his shoulders hunched, unsure of where to look. "The first rule," the Red Queen said, "is not to hurt others." The boy kept his head down. "You hurt that woman. She cried all morning." The boy hunched his shoulders even tighter. "So you have to pay her back. Not to me, but to her. Starting tomorrow, you'll be carrying water for her for a month." The boy looked up and paused for a moment, startled. "Just fetching water? You think that's not enough?" He shook his head frantically. The Red Queen turned and walked away. After a few steps, she stopped. "Come find me at the blacksmith's shop when you're done choosing. The old blacksmith needs someone to operate the bellows. Meals included." She didn't turn around. The boy stood in the doorway, the winter wind whipping his hair into a mess. He stood there for a long time, then slowly squatted down, burying his face in his knees. "My shoulders are shaking." That night, Lin Yuan sat on the city wall. He held a cigarette in his hand, but didn't light it. He opened his left palm. He wrote 2 characters on it with his right index finger. "Rules." The strokes landed on his skin, slightly cool. He watched the 2 characters fade little by little, from clear to blurry, from blurry to disappear. His palm remained his palm. The lines remained the lines. He recalled his sense of loss. Lost, writing screenplays, was about setting rules. Who lives, who dies, who laughs, who cries, who takes which path, who hits which wall. Every stroke of the pen was a rule. Lost set too many rules. In the end, those rules swallowed him whole. Lin Yuan turned his palm over, palm down, against the stone of the city wall. The stone was cold and rough, touched by countless hands and blown by countless years of wind. He didn't want to be the one who was disappointed. But all freedom requires rules. These 2 things collided in my chest like 2 flints, constantly sparking tiny sparks. The sparks fell into the darkness, flashing briefly before going out. Then they flashed again, and went out once more. He sat there for a long time. The night wind blew in from the wilderness, carrying the scent of hay and dust. The footsteps of sentries on the city walls echoed intermittently. A dog barked twice in the distance, then fell silent. The city of freedom slept. He took one last look at his palm. Those 2 words have completely disappeared. Nothing was left behind. He jumped down from the city wall and headed towards his dwelling. He paused as he passed the stone tablet. Moonlight shone on the tablet, making the 6 characters appear a dark blue-green. The 5 characters below newly carved were a lighter color, as if they hadn't fully dried. "There are no gods, only men. Don't hurt others." He reached out and touched the newly carved 5 characters. The stone surface was rough, and the edges of the carvings still had small stone chips, making it a bit prickly to the touch. "That's the rule. It wasn't ordained by God. It's determined by humans." He withdrew his hand and continued walking forward. The moon had moved a little further west. The stone monument of the City of Freedom stood inside the city gate, half bathed in moonlight and half hidden in shadow. 11 characters were arranged from top to bottom on the bluish-gray stone surface. The 6 above. The following 5. They were all written by people. In the first month after the rules were established, nothing happened. No one stole anything. No one fought. The prices at the market were so fair that the merchants from the south shook their heads, saying you'd lose money doing business like that. The tavern owner's wine sold out every day, not because business was good, but because she would kick out anyone who got too drunk. "We have work to do tomorrow," she said. "Go home and sleep." The old blacksmith carved a mark on the side of the city gate. He said it was to mark the days, carving 1 mark each day. When the entire wall was covered, the City of Freedom would be 1 year old. When the 47th mark was carved, the Grey Rat arrived. His name wasn't Grey Rat. Nobody knew his name. He crawled across the edge of the Thousand-Throat Beast Order's hunting grounds, his clothes tattered to shreds when he reached the city gate, his face covered in mud, only his eyes shining. The guards at the gate gave him a bowl of water and a dry biscuit. He took it, said nothing, and squatted down at the foot of the city wall to eat it. Then he walked through the city wall. The guard was still holding the water bowl in his hand, but he had already disappeared. The grey rat's ability is to pass through walls, not destruction. Passage. Any solid object, if he so desires, can pass through as easily as through air. Walls, floors, roofs, locked doors, nailed windows, they make no difference to him. He spent 3 days figuring out the location of every street, every house, and every storage room in the free city. On the 4th night, he began to steal. The first house belonged to a tailor in the south of the city. He lost a bag of flour. The second house belonged to a farmer in the north of the city. He lost a piece of cured meat. The third, the fourth, the fifth house he stole slowly but steadily. 1 house each night, taking only food and nothing else. Like a mouse digging a hole in a granary, taking only 1 grain of rice at a time, but digging more and more holes. By the 12th day, the families who had lost their belongings began to meet up. Upon meeting, they discovered a pattern. On the 15th night, the Red Queen waited for him on the rooftop next to the well in the north of the city. A grey squirrel emerged from behind the back wall of a house, carrying a bag of dried dates. Just as it steadied itself, a foot stepped on its shadow. He looked up. The Red Queen stood in the moonlight, her red hair cascading to her waist, twirling a dagger in her hand. The blade of the dagger reflected the moonlight, flashing brightly and then dimming. "I ate well," she said. The grey squirrel threw away the dried dates and ran away. He charged toward the nearest wall, which was as good as impenetrable before him, but the moment his feet left the ground, the Red Queen's hand was already gripping the back of his collar. His upper body passed right through the wall, while his lower body remained on this side. The Red Queen pulled him out of the wall like a fish out of water. "Through the wall," she said, "not through me." The next morning, the grey squirrel was taken to the center of the market. A crowd gathered around. A dozen or so families who had previously lost things stood at the front. Tailors, farmers, the woman who had lost her silver comb, this time she'd lost a bag of salt. No one spoke. But those gazes, fixed on the grey squirrel, weighed heavier than anything else. The grey squirrel squatted on the ground, his hands tucked into his sleeves, his eyes fixed on the ground. His face was finally clean, and he looked younger than his actual age, about 17 or 18, with an old scar on his lip. Lin Yuan walked through the crowd. He stood in front of the grey rat, looking down at him. "Why did you steal?" The grey mouse didn't look up. "Hungry. 2 meals a day are provided at the city gates." "Not enough." A voice rang out from the crowd. It wasn't angry, but rather a sound forced from the nose, a mixture of amusement and exasperation. The tailor was a woman in her 40s, wearing a blue apron with pins fastened to it. She took a step forward. "If you're hungry, just tell me. I'll get you some." The grey mouse raised its eyelids and glanced at her. "I don't owe anyone anything." "So you think stealing means you don't owe anything?" The grey mouse fell silent. The Red Queen leaned against the city wall, her dagger already sheathed. Her gaze was fixed on the grey rat, her expression blank. "You say there are no gods, no rules in the land of freedom," Grey Rat suddenly spoke, his voice not loud, but each word clearly enunciated. "So what if I steal? Isn't freedom about doing whatever you want?" The market was quiet. The silence was different from before. It wasn't sinking, nor was it floating. It was stuck. Like a bone stuck in the throat, unable to go up or down. The grey mouse said what many people had thought about but never said aloud. What is freedom? Without God's city, without church law, without the scales of justice, without the prey of 1,000 throats, what's left? If anything can be done, what's wrong with stealing? If anything can be done, what is right? Lin Yuan squatted down. His gaze was level with that of the grey rat. Freedom is not about doing whatever you want. The grey mouse looked at him. Freedom is being able to choose not to do what you want. The grey mouse's eyes flickered. Not in understanding, but because it had encountered something it had never considered before. "You steal," Lin Yuan said, "because you can't control yourself. You're hungry, so you take. You see something, so you go through the wall. Your ability allows you to go anywhere, so you go. You didn't have a choice not to go. You just followed your instincts." Lin Yuan's voice was calm. He wasn't lecturing, he was stating a fact. That's not freedom. That's being led astray by yourself. The grey squirrel's lips tightened. The old scar stretched into a white line at the corner of its mouth. "You can't control hunger," Lin Yuan said. "Hunger controls you. You can't control greed, greed controls you. You can pass through all the walls, but you can't pass through yourself." The grey squirrel lowered its head. It pulled its hands from its sleeves and placed them on its knees. Crumbs of dried dates were still under its fingernails. 3 days. Lin Yuan stood up. 3 days isn't punishment. It's to make you think about something. What's up? What do you not want to do? The grey mouse was locked in that empty storage room. It was the same room the Red Queen had used to lock up the boy who stole the comb. The lock was made of wire and could be opened with a pull. But he didn't pull it. On the first day, someone slipped a bowl of porridge under the door. The grey mouse didn't touch it. The porridge cooled and formed a crust. In the evening, he drank the porridge. The next day, someone slipped him a piece of bread. He ate it. After he finished eating, he carved a mark on the wall. On the third day, no one slipped anything in. The door opened from the outside. The Red Queen stood in the doorway. "Come out." The grey mouse stood up. His legs were a little weak, he hadn't moved much in 3 days. He walked out, supporting himself on the doorframe, the sunlight making him squint. The tailor stood outside the door, holding a bowl of hot porridge. The grey mouse looked at her. It didn't take the bait. It's not something I owe you, the tailor said. It's your wages for the work you're doing now. The gray mouse was stunned. What job? The tailor pointed to the house behind her. It was an adobe house with a crack in the wall that stretched from the eaves to the foundation. It let in wind in winter and leaked rain in summer. She had patched it with mud 3 times, but it cracked each time. Don't you know how to walk through walls? The tailor said. Go inside the wall and see where the crack is. The gray mouse stood in front of that wall for a long time. Then he put it on. He stayed inside the wall for about the time it takes to smoke half a cigarette. When he came out, his face was covered in dirt, and his hair was full of mud. He squatted down and drew a diagram on the ground with his finger the direction and depth of the cracks, where the surface cracked and where the inside was hollow. The tailor stared at the picture for a long time without saying a word. You drew it more clearly than I can see it, she said. The gray squirrel wiped its face with its sleeve. It's quite big inside. If it's not fixed soon, it'll collapse in winter. The tailor brought out a bucket of mud and a spatula from inside the house. Then fix it. Gray Mouse took the trowel. His hands were thin, with prominent knuckles, unlike hands that had done manual labor. He squatted at the base of the wall and poured mortar into the cracks. His movements were slow and clumsy. It took him 3 coats to smooth it out. But he didn't pass through the wall. He stood outside the wall, wiping it little by little with his hands. The Red Queen leaned against the distant city wall, watching. Lin Yuan stood beside her. Did you teach him? The Red Queen asked. What should we teach? That saying, you can choose not to do something if you want to. Lin Yuan remained silent. Did you come up with this yourself, or did you copy it? I came up with it myself. Lin Yuan paused. But I'm not the first person to come up with it. The Red Queen turned her head and glanced at him. Who's first? Lin Yuan did not answer. His gaze was fixed on a distant place beyond the city walls, so far that the horizon blurred into a grayish blue. A gust of wind blew, lifting the hair from his forehead. The Red Queen did not ask further questions. The gray squirrel finished repairing the tailor's wall. The next day, he repaired the farmer's roof. On the 3rd day, he went into the cracks in the city wall and drew all the holes inside, which the old blacksmith then filled with grout. He didn't steal anything again. Later, someone asked him what his name was. He said, Gray Mouse. It's not a nickname, the man said. Your name? What's your real name? The gray squirrel squatted on the city wall, holding a mud trowel in its hand, its face streaked with dirt from the sweat. Forgot. He smeared the mud into the last crack. From now on, we'll call it Gray Mouse. The Red Queen recorded this incident and wrote it on a wooden board. The board was hung next to the stone tablet, and the first rule was inscribed on it, do not harm others. She carved a second one below. One's own freedom cannot infringe upon the freedom of others. After finishing carving, she stepped back to take a look. The characters weren't as well carved as Lin Yuan's, the strokes were a bit crooked and uneven in depth. But they were still clearly visible. The old blacksmith passed by and stopped to take a look. Who made this decision? It was decided by the gray squirrel, said the Red Queen. The old blacksmith raised an eyebrow. Him. He chose not to steal. The Red Queen wiped the carving knife on her trousers. That's setting a rule. A rule for himself, and for everyone who can walk through walls in the future. The old blacksmith, pipe in mouth, stared at the 2 lines of text and slowly exhaled a puff of smoke. First rule, do not harm others. Second rule, your freedom must not infringe upon the freedom of others. He took the pipe out of his mouth and tapped the wooden board with the mouthpiece. The second one is more difficult than the first one. What makes it difficult? First tube for the hand. Second tube for the core. He's gone. The Red Queen stood in front of the wooden board and read the sentence again. A breeze blew by, and the wooden planks swayed slightly, making a very faint creaking sound. That night, Lin Yuan sat on the city wall again. He opened his palm. This time he didn't write anything. He just looked at his palm. The lines on his palm were dark in the moonlight, like a very old map, marking all the places he had been. Freedom is not about doing whatever you want. Freedom is the ability to choose not to do something. When he said those words, the gray rat's eyes flickered. In that instant, Lin Yuan knew that the gray rat understood. Not because he said it well, but because the gray rat itself had been searching for those words. He had simply spoken them for it. But what about himself? He can write it down, speak it aloud, and carve it in stone. But can he actually do it? His hand slowly closed in the moonlight, clenching into a fist. His knuckles turned white. Then he opened it again. There was nothing in my palm. He stood up and walked down the city wall. As he passed the stone tablet, he glanced at the second rule on the wooden board. One's own freedom cannot infringe upon the freedom of others. The strokes are crooked and uneven in depth. But the carving is very deep. Mr. Mo walked the streets of the City of Freedom every day. From sunrise to sunset, from east to west, from the city walls to the city gates. He carried his umbrella, torn in 2, its surface ripped like a tattered flag, yet he held it up. He knew no one, remembered nothing, but his body remembered the path. He remembered the 230 steps from the medical tent to the communal kitchen, the 3 withered trees that led from the workshop to the school, and the 2 turns that led from the city gate to the painting. His body remembered. People called him Mr. Mo. Not because they knew his name nobody remembered. It was because Lin Yuan called him that, so they called him that too. Mr. Mo. A code name, a shadow, a moving statue. He never responded because he didn't remember it was his name. But he would stop. When someone called him Mr. Mo, he would stop, his milky white eyes fixed on the direction of the sound, wait 3 seconds, and then continue walking. His body remembered someone calling him. Lin Yuan saw Mr. Mo every day. In the morning, he stood at the city gate, like a pillar. At noon, he stood at the entrance of the public kitchen, like a beggar waiting for food. In the evening, he stood in front of the painting, like someone looking at it. He couldn't see the painting, but he stood there. There were many people in the painting of the white deer. Mr. Mo stood at the very back, holding an umbrella. Below the painting was a line of words, he will not forget. He forgot everyone, but everyone did not forget him. That day, Lin Yuan emerged from the workshop, his hands still covered in iron filings. Iron Hammer had taught him blacksmithing. He learned slowly, but he wanted to learn. Because Iron Hammer said, blacksmithing can calm the mind. He needed calmness. Mr. Mo stood at the workshop entrance, holding a cracked umbrella, his milky white eyes fixed on the workshop. He stood there, like a statue, like a tree, like a stone weathered by the wind for a long time. Lin Yuan walked past him and said, "Good morning." He didn't expect a response. Mr. Mo never responded. But he responded today. "You are becoming a god in this city." The voice was hoarse, like sandpaper scraping against sheet metal, like a door hinge that hadn't been used in a long time. Lin Yuan stopped. He turned around and looked at Mr. Mo, milky white eyes, unfocused, but directed in his direction. The umbrella was split in two, the cracks on its surface like a dried-up riverbed. His hands were thin and bony, the veins bulging, but the way he held the umbrella handle was still the same as before, right hand on top, left hand on the bottom. "What did you say?" Lin Yuan asked. "You are becoming a god in this city," Mr. Mo repeated, his voice flat and monotone, as if reciting a text written long ago. "Even if you don't admit it, they look at you like a god. You set the rules like a god. You protect them like a god. What's the difference between you and a god?" Lin Yuan stared at him for a long time. "I am not a god," he said. "I get tired, I make mistakes, and I die." Mr. Mo did not answer. His milky white eyes were fixed on Lin Yuan's direction, as if he were looking, yet also as if he wasn't. Then he spoke, his voice even softer, as if it came from a great distance. "God can do that too. But believers don't." A gust of wind swept through the city of freedom, causing Mr. Mo's umbrella to sway slightly. He didn't hold it steady, the umbrella settled itself. Lin Yuan stood still, watching Mr. Mo turn and walk away, step by step. His steps were slow, but steady. The tip of the umbrella touched the ground, tap, tap, tap. Like a blind man's cane, like the pendulum of a clock, like a metronome that never stops. Lin Yuan stood at the workshop entrance, his hands still covered in iron filings. He watched Mr. Mo's figure disappear behind the painting. Then he turned and looked at the city of freedom. A child ran out of the communal kitchen, half a steamed bun in his hand. He saw Lin Yuan, stopped, and smiled. "Uncle Lin." His eyes were bright, not the light of a god, but the light of a child. But there was something in that smile that made Lin Yuan uncomfortable. It wasn't worship, not gratitude, but awe. Like looking at someone who wouldn't fall, like looking at someone who wouldn't make mistakes, like looking at a god. He recalled the way the members of the Radiant Church looked at Claire. Exactly the same. He walked into the communal kitchen. A candle was simmering the porridge, the flame flickering in her palm. Her body temperature was dropping, her lips were turning purple, but the porridge was hot. She saw Lin Yuan and smiled. "Mr. Lin, the porridge is almost ready. Please have a bowl first." Her tone was respectful, with a habit of "you go first." It wasn't equality, it was reverence. He walked into the workshop. The hammer was striking the iron, the robotic arm lifted the hammer, brought it down, lifted it again, brought it down. Rust glittered in the sparks. He couldn't speak, but he heard Lin Yuan's footsteps, and the robotic arm tapped the anvil thump. It was a greeting. But Lin Yuan noticed the way the hammer was striking had changed. Before, it was casual between friends, now it was a subordinate reporting to a superior. It wasn't equality, it was reverence. He walked up to the painting. The white deer sat before it, sketching something new in her sketchbook. She painted a door, behind which was a city. In the center of the city stood a man, black hair, dark brown eyes, holding a glowing stone. That was him. She painted many people, but he was the largest, standing in the very center, like a sun. Not equality, but reverence. He walked to the medical tent. Sumuking was bandaging an elderly man. Her hands were steady, and the bandage was wrapped tightly. The old man said, "Dr. So, you can't see, how can you bandage it better than someone who can?" Sumuking said, "My hands can see." The old man smiled. Then he saw Lin Yuan and stood up. "Mr. Linear." His tone was respectful, with a nervous "you've arrived." It wasn't equality, it was looking up to him. Lin Yuan stepped out of the medical tent and stood in the center of the city of freedom. The shattered umbrella, planted in the highest ruin, stood like a silent witness. He looked at the residents, they were looking at him. Not at an ordinary person, but at a protector, a leader, a man who would not fall. He remembered Mr. Mo's words, "You are becoming the god of this city." He didn't want to be a god, but he didn't know what else he could be if not a god. He climbed to the highest point of the ruins and stood beside Mr. Mo's umbrella. The wind blew, ruffling his hair. He looked at the city, over 500 people, 90-odd houses, a cobblestone street, a communal kitchen, a medical tent, a workshop, a school. He had built it, but it was becoming something he didn't recognize. It wasn't the city that had changed, it was his place within it. He was no longer the builder, but the guardian. No longer an ordinary person, but a leader. No longer he, but Mr. Lin, Uncle Lin, the rewriter. He looked down at his hands. The gloves were still on, a dark red light flowing between his fingertips. This hand had touched scripts, rewritten rules, and held the writer's pen. But it couldn't hold on to equality. What are you looking at? Sumuking's voice came from below. She stood beneath the ruins, her head tilted back, her milky white eyes fixed on his direction. She couldn't see him, but she knew he was standing there. Looking at the city, he said. What did you see? You saw me. Sumuking paused for a moment. She climbed up and stood beside him. Her hand groped for his hand and took it. Her hand was rough, but warm. You are not a god, she said. I know. Then what are you afraid of? Lin Yuan looked at the houses, the people, the painting. He looked at the cracked umbrella and thought of Mr. Mo. He had forgotten everyone, but his body remembered. His body remembered the city of freedom, remembered those people, remembered the need to protect them. He didn't want to be a god, but he wanted to protect them. Protection isn't something a god does. Protection is something humans do. I'm afraid of becoming the person I don't want to be, he said. Sumuking squeezed his hand. Then don't change. Lin Yuan looked at her. Milky white eyes, rough fingers, a nameless face. She hadn't changed. From saint to traitor to doctor, she had always changed, but she hadn't become someone she didn't want to be, because she knew who she was. Doctor. She chose that. Lin Yuan turned his head, looking at the city. He didn't know who he was. Was he the rewriter? The builder of the city of freedom? Bai Ji's son? Chen Shi's vessel? He was all of those, but not all of them. He was still searching. But he knew he didn't want to be a god. Let's go, he said. The porridge is getting cold. He descended from the ruins. Sumuking followed behind him. Their shadows were close together in the moonlight, yet inseparable. He was him, she was her. Not gods, not believers. Just people. The city of freedom was built. City walls, housing, a clinic, kitchens, workshops, schools. 531 people. A cobblestone path stretched from the city gate to the painting below. Mr. Mo's umbrella stood atop the highest ruin, like an ever-fallen flag. But Lin Yuan stood at the city gate, looking at the city he had built with his own hands, with only one thought in his mind: was this real? Not asking if the city was real, but if freedom was real. The choices those people made, their smiles, their "I chose this place," were they their own choices, or were they predetermined? He remembered the lost script. The protagonist builds a city, becomes a god, is betrayed, and falls to the bottom. A classic narrative. Readers love it. Every line in the script for Babel was written down, exactly like every line he had spoken. Even his rebellion was pre-written. What about his building of the City of Freedom? Was that also pre-written? Had he ever seen the words City of Freedom in the script? He couldn't remember. But he dared not turn back to look. Because he was afraid to see it. Lin Yuan sat on a stone bench at the city gate, head bowed, clutching the stone he'd brought from the kindergarten. A fragment of the pollution core, grey and cold. He remembered the kindergarten principal, remembered her last words: "They are all good children." He remembered those words, they weren't from a script. He believed it. Did I choose to build the City of Freedom, or was it written in the script? He asked himself. Chen Shi's voice echoed in his mind, soft and weary. You've asked this many times. Because there is no answer. Chen Shi paused for a moment. What are you afraid of the answer to? Lin Yuan didn't answer. He feared the answer was written in the script. He feared he was nothing more than a line of text, a character, a tool for the reader's amusement. He feared everyone in the City of Freedom was a line of text, their pain a line of text, their laughter a line of text. He feared that when Sumuking held his hand, the line holding was also a line of text. Lin Yuan. Sumuking's voice came from behind. She didn't call him Uncle Lin or Mr. Lin, but Lin Yuan. He looked up. She stood at the city gate, her milky white eyes fixed on his direction. She couldn't see him, but she knew he was there. You've been sitting here for an hour. She came over, groped her way to the stone stool, and sat down next to him. Her hand touched his, but she didn't hold it, they just touched, fingers to fingers. What are you thinking about? She asked. Lin Yuan looked at her hands. Rough, with fine lines, her nails trimmed short. He remembered the piece of paper she had written doctor, crossed out many times, finally writing you. She was real. Her hands were real. I'm wondering if I'm acting out a heroic city building play, he said. Sumuking didn't answer immediately. Her finger twitched, touching his finger, but didn't move away. Do you want to act in it? In no mood. Then stop acting. Do what you're supposed to do. Lin Yuan turned to look at her. Her milky white eyes were unfocused, yet very bright. Not the light of God, but her own light. What should be done? Sumuking thought for a moment. When you first came to the City of Freedom, you did whatever you saw. If you saw a house was crooked, you built a wall. If you saw a child was hungry, you cooked porridge. If you saw someone injured, you bandaged them. You didn't think about whether it was right or wrong, you just did it. Now you're overthinking it. Lin Yuan paused for a moment. Because now we have a city, we have people, and we have responsibilities. If one thing is done wrong, more than 500 people will follow suit. Sumuking turned her head, her milky white eyes looking in his direction. You made mistakes before. In the kindergarten instance, you almost died. In the Jing'an Temple instance, you were targeted by the plot correction force. In the Tower of Babel, your accuracy dropped to 51%. You always made mistakes. But you didn't stop. Because stopping is more terrifying than making mistakes. Lin Yuan didn't speak. He looked down at the grey stone. The principal's voice still echoed in his mind, they are all good children. That was true. It wasn't in the script. Because he remembered his hands trembling and his heart aching at that moment. A script can write hands trembling, but it can't capture the feeling of trembling. Sumukeng. If one day you discover that your feelings for me were written in a script, what would you do? Sumukeng's fingers paused for a moment. Then she smiled. Then you find it first. Tell me when you find it, and I'll say something. Lin Yuan looked at her. Why? Because you doubted first. You discovered first. You told me first. I'm listening. Lin Yuan fell silent. He put the stone in his pocket and stood up. Sumukeng also stood up. The wind blew through the city of freedom, causing Mr. Mo's umbrella to sway gently. In the distance, a hammer was striking iron in the workshop. Thud, thud, thud. A white deer was painting in front of a painting a door, behind which was the sun. The Red Queen stood on the city wall, her milky white eyes gazing into the distance. A candle was cooking porridge in the communal kitchen, its flame dancing in her palm. An echo was relaying a message for an old man, and a stone statue was moving stones. More than 500 people were alive. Lin Yuan watched all of this. He didn't know if he was acting in a heroic city-building play, but he knew these people weren't actors. Their wounds bled, their tears were salty, and their laughter was genuine. That was enough. Let's go, he said. The porridge is getting cold. Sumukeng reached out her hand. He took it. Her hand was rough, but warm. The two walked towards the communal kitchen. Their shadows were close together in the moonlight, yet inseparable. He was him, she was her. Not gods, not believers, not characters. Just people. The Red Queen's intelligence arrived at 3 in the morning. She stood at Lin Yuan's door, not knocking, just standing there. She couldn't see him, but she could feel his breathing. He was inside, awake. He had rarely slept since returning from the Tower of Babel. Come in, Lin Yuan's voice came from inside. The Red Queen pushed open the door. She stood in the doorway, her milky white eyes fixed on him. The dagger was tucked into her waistband. The runes on the blade had long since died, but she hadn't replaced it. The Red Queen never used a knife given to her by others. The righteous gods and the evil gods are meeting, she said. The representatives of 19 deities, the Lord of Radiance, the King of the Anvil, the Beast of 1,000 Throats, all of them. Location, a floating island in the Pacific Ocean. Time, 3 days from now. How did you know? I have people in the 1,000-throat beast cult. Not believers, but pawns. Pawns know more than believers because they can't be brainwashed. She paused. A message from Monica. Lin Yuan looked at her. Monica? Why did she help you? She didn't help me. She just felt that the outcome of this meeting wasn't good for her either. The Red Queen's voice was flat. The 1,000-throat beast wants to turn the City of Freedom into a hunting ground. But Monica doesn't want to fight. She says she can't win. Lin Yuan paused for a moment. Did she go to a meeting? Go. As one of the agents of the 1,000-throat beast. But she can't speak. The words she speaks aren't hers. The Red Queen paused. You're going to your death? She's an agent of 19 gods. Each one could crush you. I'm not going to fight. I'm going to listen. What are you listening to? Let them decide our fate. The Red Queen remained silent. She turned and walked towards the door, taking a few steps before stopping. The white deer's spatial portal can reach there, but it can't get too close. There's a divine barrier around the floating island. Space will be distorted. How far can it go? 1 kilometer away. The rest of the way, you'll have to walk on your own. She walked out the door and disappeared into the darkness. Lin Yuan sat on the bed, motionless. He looked out the window. Dawn was approaching, and the great crack glowed in the sky like a half-closed eye. 19 agents of the gods. The Lord of Radiance, the King of the Anvil, the 1,000-throat beast. He remembered the King of the Anvil's divine realm, that enormous workshop, that furnace, those deep red eyes. The King of the Anvil wasn't an enemy, but he was a god. The interests of gods and the interests of humans were never the same. At dawn, Lin Yuan found Bai Lu. She sat in front of the painting, sketching something new in her sketchbook. She drew a door, behind which was a sea, and on the sea was a floating island. The island was small, small enough to hold only a few dozen people. In the center of the island was a circular theater, with seats arranged from low to high, like an inverted flower. She had never seen that island, but she had drawn it. Did her body remember? Perhaps it was an intuition of spatial abilities. She could see the structure of space in her mind. Lin Yuan squatted down beside her. Bai Lu, I need you to open a door. To this island. The white deer raised her head, her deep blue eyes looking at him. She couldn't speak, but she wrote a line in her sketchbook with her paintbrush. How far? Very far away. In the middle of the sea. The white deer lowered her head and drew a line in her sketchbook. The line started at the City of Freedom and ended at the island. Above the line, she wrote, 1 kilometer away. No closer. Just like the Red Queen had said. She didn't need maps, she didn't need coordinates, she only needed to know where she wanted to go. Her ability was space, and space was her body. Lin Yuan patted her head. Thank you. Bai Lu lowered his head and wrote 2 words next to the door. Be careful. The words were small, but he wrote them with great force, and the pen tip even tore the paper. Lin Yuan stood up and turned around. Sumuking stood behind him. He didn't know when she had arrived, her milky white eyes were fixed on him. I'll go too, she said. You're no good. You're too conspicuous. I'm blind. Nobody will notice a blind woman. Lin Yuan looked at her. Her milky white eyes were unfocused, yet bright. She stood there, her grey hoodie clinging to her body in the wind. Her fingers were rough, her nails short and neatly trimmed. She looked like an ordinary, unremarkable woman in her 30s. Not a saint, not a traitor, not a doctor. No one would notice her. Lin Yuan remained silent for a long time. Okay, Sumuking nodded. She didn't say thank you, nor I'll be careful. She simply turned and walked towards the medical tent to prepare. Lin Yuan stood in front of the painting, looking at the door Bai Lu had painted. Beside the door were 2 words, be careful. He reached out and touched them. The ink wasn't dry yet, a little smeared onto his finger. Black, ordinary ink. But very real. In the distance, Iron Hammer stood at the workshop entrance, his mechanical arm reflecting a cold light in the morning glow. He could no longer speak, nor see, but he could feel the vibrations. Lin Yuan's heartbeat quickened, then steadied. He tapped the ground thump. He knew. He would go too. The Red Queen stood on the city wall, a dagger tucked into her belt, her milky white eyes gazing into the distance. She knew where that island was. She had been there. Long ago, when she was still a follower of the thousand-throat beast, she had killed someone on that island. That person was her friend. She had forgotten many things, but she remembered that island. Lin Yuan walked into the crooked house and closed the door. He sat down at the table, took out the writer's pen, and wrote a line in his palm, I will return. The golden words glowed on his skin, lingered for 3 seconds, and then disappeared. The pen could only alter the reality within a copy, the palm was not a copy, so the words couldn't remain. But he wrote it many times. Once, twice, 3 times. Each time it disappeared, and each time he remembered it. When he wrote it for the 10th time, the words lingered for 4 seconds. It wasn't that the pen had changed, it was that he had remembered. He didn't need the words, he needed to remember. 3 days later, Bai Lu stood at the city gate of the City of Freedom and opened a door. The door was golden and radiant. Behind it was not the streets of the City of Freedom, but a vast sea. The sea was deep blue, with large waves and a strong wind. In the distance, a floating island drifted on the sea, like a leaf. In the center of the island was a circular theater, with seats arranged from low to high, like an inverted flower. There was no one on the island. The meeting had not yet begun, but they had to arrive early and hide beforehand. Lin Yuan stood before the door, glancing back at the City of Freedom. Iron Hammer stood to his left, his mechanical arm hanging limply at his side, rust spots like scars in the morning light. Sumuking stood to his right, her milky white eyes fixed on the light ahead. The Red Queen stood at the very back, a dagger tucked into her waistband, her milky white eyes also fixed on the door. White Deer stood beside the door, clutching her sketchbook, her deep blue eyes watching them. She couldn't go. Her abilities only allowed her to travel a kilometer, but her spatial awareness was too strong, she would be detected by the divine barrier. She would remain in the City of Freedom. She held up her sketchbook, on which was written, be careful. Come back. 4 words, written twice. Once be careful, once come back. Lin Yuan looked at her and nodded. He walked through the door. Iron Hammer followed behind him, Sumuking followed behind Iron Hammer, and Red Queen followed at the very back. The door closed behind them. White Deer stood there, watching the door disappear. She lowered her head and drew a sea in her sketchbook, with a floating island on it. Standing on the floating island were 4 people, one with black hair, one with a mechanical arm, one in a grey hoodie, and one in a red trench coat. She wrote a line below, they will come back. The White Deer's spatial portal transported them to a plane a kilometer above the floating island. Not land, but water. Deep blue, icy cold, with waves higher than a person. When Lin Yuan fell into the sea, a mouthful of salty water filled his mouth, choking him. He didn't make a sound. Iron Hammer was to his left, the weight of the mechanical arm pulled him down, but his body-floated machinery was heavier than a person, but the air in his chest was lighter than water. He was like a half-submerged, half-floating stone, without struggling. Sumuking was to his right. She couldn't see, but she could swim. Her hand touched his arm, not grasping, just confirming direction. The Red Queen was behind them, a dagger in her mouth, her milky white eyes staring forward like a fearless fish. 4 people swam silently toward the island. 1 kilometer. The waves were large, the wind was strong, but the light on the island was even greater. Golden light surged forth from the center of the island, like a giant lamp, illuminating the sea like a glowing cloth. Lin Yuan's wristband vibrated underwater. Warning, approaching a divine barrier. Barrier range, 500 meters around the island. 19 high-energy reactions detected. Source, divine agent. Rank, SS+. 500 meters. They were still outside the barrier, but any further and they would be discovered. Lin Yuan stopped and gestured, dive down. Iron Hammer was the first to sink, the weight of the robotic arm helping him go down. Sumuking took a deep breath and followed. The Red Queen released the dagger, which sank to the bottom of the sea. She didn't care anymore. Lin Yuan was the last. The blue sea water grew darker and colder. His eardrums ached from the water pressure, but he didn't surface. He counted his heartbeats. The White Deer said, 1 kilometer away. No closer. The line she drew ended in the sea, not on the island. so they had to walk the last kilometer through the water, passing under the barrier. The barrier was 500 meters around the island, but it was above the water, not underwater. The gods forgot about the underwater world. Or they thought no one could come underwater. They were right. No one. But there were 4 people. 500 meters. Lin Yuan held his breath and continued swimming. Sumuking was on his left, holding on to his clothes. Iron Hammer was on his right, the vibrations from the mechanical arm guiding him. Red Queen was in the lead, faster than anyone else underwater. She was used to the darkness. 400 meters. 300 meters. 200 meters. 100 meters. His lungs were burning, his eardrums were aching, and his vision was beginning to blur. But he saw light above, not the sun, but the golden light of the theater, piercing through the seawater like a layer of molten gold. He surfaced. The moment his head broke the surface, he gasped for breath, his lungs unfolding like charred paper. Sumuking was beside him. She wasn't panting, her breathing was steady. She was used to not relying on her eyes. The hammer surfaced, the rust on its mechanical arm like scars in the golden light. The Red Queen was already on the shore, crouching behind a rock, her milky white eyes fixed on the theater. Lin Yuan climbed ashore and lay down behind a rock. Sumuking and Taikawi followed behind. The 4 of them were soaked and cold, but not shivering. The island was small, so small that it contained only the theater. The theater was circular, with seats rising from low to high, like an inverted flower. The seats were made of light and water, not stone, but solidified light and flowing water. 19 things sat on the seats. Some shone with golden light, like human-shaped suns. Some were shrouded in darkness, like a breathing mist. Some had no fixed shape, like a pool of flowing mercury, like a writhing mass of flesh, like a gust of wind without direction. Lin Yuan's eye of insight activated automatically. He saw the words above the heads of those things. The Righteous God's Agent's storyline character has a 100% obedience rate. The Agent of the King of the Righteous Anvil, story character obedience rate 100%. The Evil God's Thousand-Throat Beast's Agent story character obedience rate 100%. Agent of the Righteous God's Eye of Wisdom storyline character obedience 100%. The storyline character Agent of the True Goddess of Life has a 100% obedience rate. The Evil God's Flesh Weaver's Agent's storyline character obedience rate is 100%. The Shadow Lord's Agent storyline character's obedience rate is 100%. 19. All 100% obedience. Even the gods were pre-written. Their anger was a script, their fear was a script, their compromise was a script. Lin Yuan stared at the words, his fingers trembling. He thought of the script for the Tower of Babel, of Chen Mo's computer, of that vanished line, "I will know the truth." The truth was right here. The gods weren't gods, they were characters. Like Iron Hammer, White Deer, and Mr. Mo, they, too, were written. Lin Yuan hid on a beam at the top of the theater. The beam was made of light, solid to the touch, yet appeared transparent. From above, he could see every agent and the entire structure of the theater. Sumuking was beside him. She couldn't see him, but she could feel the wind, a swirling wind in the theater, rising from the bottom like an invisible vortex. The Red Queen was on a beam on the other side, her dagger gone, but her hand still intact. Iron Hammer waited behind the rocks outside the theater. His mechanical arm could sense vibrations, and he listened. The meeting began. The agent of the Lord of Light rose. It was a humanoid figure, radiant with light, without features or gender, only light. Its voice did not come from its mouth, but from within its body, from every inch of light, like 1,000 bells ringing simultaneously. The existence of the City of Freedom disrupts the balance of the plot. Its voice was flat, devoid of anger or fear, merely a statement. A city without gods, a rewriter, a group of people who need no faith. The reader's interest in them is rising. Interest in the gods is falling. This is dangerous. The Anvil King's agent sat on its throne, a humanoid figure made of metal, much like the statue in the Anvil King's divine realm. Its voice was like a hammer striking an anvil. Thud, thud, thud. Danger, it said. The danger isn't the capital of freedom. The danger is the reader's patience. They don't want to see the same play performed 3 times. The agent of the Thousand-Throat Beast was a writhing mass of dark red mist, shapeless, like a heart that was forever changing shape. Its voice did not come from one place, but from all directions, from the air, from the water vapor, from the light, like countless snakes simultaneously flicking their tongues. The protagonist's rise is a necessary plot climax, but we can't let him win too easily. The mist shifted, as if laughing. Readers like to see heroes win, but they like even more to see heroes lose first. The more crushing the defeat, the more satisfying the victory. Lin Yuan's fingers tightened. He looked at the wisp of mist and remembered Monica. She said she didn't want to fight, but her god wanted to fight. The Thousand-Throat Beast wanted to see the City of Freedom lose, wanted to see Lin Yuan lose, wanted to see the hero fall to the bottom. The agent of the Mother of Life is in the shape of a woman, her whole body made of vines and flowers, and her voice is like a spring. Losing is acceptable, but death is not. If the protagonist dies, the story ends. The readers will leave. The agent of the Flesh Weaver is a writhing mass of flesh, with upper and lower eyelids, and countless blinking eyes. Not dying is acceptable, but the pain is necessary. The reader's pleasure comes from the character's suffering. Not death, but pain. The Shadow Lord's agent was a shapeless mass of darkness, and his voice seemed to come from the bottom of a well. Arrange a betrayal. Readers love betrayal. The most favorite kind, someone they trust stabs them in the back. Not an enemy, but a friend. A moment of silence fell over the theater. Then the other agents began to chime in. It wasn't a discussion, it was confirmation. Their opinions weren't their own, they were the script's. Obedience was 100%. They weren't in a meeting, they were reading from a script. Lin Yuan's wristband vibrated. Story event detected, Council of the Gods. Voting is underway for the traitor. Current votes, Samuking 42%, Red Queen 28%, Iron Hammer 18%, White Deer 12%. Samuking, 42%. Highest. She'll be portrayed as a traitor. Lin Yuan looked at that number, remembering how she sacrificed her sight at the Tower of Babel, saying, "You are my eyes." She wouldn't betray them. But the script says she will. The script will portray her as a traitor. Evidence will be fabricated, witnesses will be bribed, and memories will be altered. She'll become the target of everyone's hatred, the reader's most hated character, and then be killed or forgiven in some chapter. Reader satisfaction prediction, 89%. Lin Yuan clenched his fist, wanting to rush down. Samuking held his hand down. Her strength wasn't great, but her grip was steady. Her hands were rough, but warm. "Don't move," she whispered. "If you go down now, you'll play right into their hands. They'll say, the protagonist is impulsive, and the readers love it. Your anger will become part of the script." Lin Yuan looked at her hand. She couldn't see the gold of the theater, the representatives of the gods, or the numbers on the wristband. But she knew what he was thinking. She always did. "Do you believe me?" she asked. "Letter. Then don't move." Lin Yuan took a deep breath and loosened his fist. He looked at the agents, listening to them vote, discuss, and arrange his fate. He remembered Mr. Mo's words, "You are becoming a god of this city." He wasn't a god. But these gods weren't gods either. They were pawns. Just like him. The difference was that he knew he was a pawn. They didn't know. Or they knew, but didn't admit it. The meeting has ended. The vote result is locked at Samuking with 42%. The thousand-throat beast's misty aura murmured, "The betrayal script will be executed within 30 days. Reader vote prediction, 78%. 30 days. A month. Lin Yuan had a month to stop this betrayal. He didn't know how to stop it, but he sat on the beam, listening to the gods arranging his fate. He was smiling. Not with joy, but with helplessness. He remembered his father's words, "The abyss is not a dead end, but a bottomless possibility." He was still in the abyss, but he hadn't fallen in. He was swimming. Comments. Previous. When she returned to the City of Freedom, dawn was breaking. Bai Lu stood at the city gate, clutching her sketchbook, her deep blue eyes fixed on the still open portal. The portal shimmered with golden light, and 4 people emerged from it, soaked, cold, yet not shivering. Bai Lu lowered her head and wrote a line in the sketchbook, "Back." 3 words, written softly. She didn't write "That's great," nor "I was so worried," just "back." That was enough. Lin Yuan walked past her without stopping. He headed towards the crooked house. The door was ajar. He went inside and sat down at the table. Samuking followed behind him, standing at the doorway, but didn't go in. "Do you want to be alone for a while?" she asked. Samuking nodded and turned to leave. Her footsteps were light, as if afraid of crushing something. Iron Hammer stood at the workshop entrance, his mechanical arm hanging at his side, his milky white eyes fixed on the building. He heard Lin Yuan's heartbeat, not fast, but erratic, like a tangled thread. He tapped the ground. Thump. He asked, "How are you?" Lin Yuan didn't answer. He either couldn't hear the tap, or he heard it but didn't want to answer. Iron Hammer tapped again, even softer. Then he turned and went into the workshop, closing the door behind him. Lin Yuan sat at the table, the writer's pen before him. Its silver-white body and golden nib bore the words "Rewrite." He held the pen and wrote in his palm, "Samuking is not a traitor." The golden words glowed on his skin, lingered for 3 seconds, then vanished. The pen could only alter the reality within a copy. His palm wasn't a copy, the words wouldn't remain. He wrote it a second time. "Samuking is not a traitor." He wrote it a third time. "Samuking is not a traitor." Each time, it lingered for 3 seconds, each time disappearing. He wrote many times, until the skin on his palm turned red, until the pen's nib dulled. The words still disappeared. He changed his writing. "Samuking will not betray." Disappeared. "Samuking is a good person." Disappeared. "I believe in Samuking." Disappeared. After writing the last word, his palm glowed briefly, then went dark. Nothing remained. He couldn't control the script. Chen Shi's voice echoed in his mind, very softly, as if afraid of waking something. "You can't stop them from writing, but you can choose not to act it out." Lin Yuan placed the pen on the table and looked at it. The pen was light, almost weightless. He thought of the script for the Tower of Babel, of the vanished line, "I will know the truth." He couldn't write the truth, couldn't change fate, couldn't stop the betrayal, but he could choose not to act it out. Samuking asked, "Do you believe me?" He said, "Yes." He meant it. He believed her. Not because of evidence, not because of logic, but because he knew her. From the kindergarten scene, from when she said, "Death is liberation," from her defection from the Church of Light, from when she said in the Tower of Babel, "You are my eyes." He believed her. No need for votes, no need for evidence, no need for reader satisfaction. He believed. Lin Yuan stood up and walked out of the house. Dawn had broken, and the orange-red light shone on the City of Freedom, turning the grey rubble golden. Mr. Mo's umbrella was stuck in the highest ruin, its two halves swaying gently in the morning breeze. Sumuking sat outside the medical tent, a worn-out pen in her hand, a sheet of paper spread on her lap. She wasn't writing, she was just sitting. Her milky white eyes were fixed on the sun. She couldn't see the sun, but she could feel its warmth. The morning light was cool, unlike the midday sun. Lin Yuan walked over and stood in front of her. Sumuking. She looked up. They'll make you look like a traitor within 30 days. Evidence, witnesses, suspicion, division. It'll all be generated automatically. The story will write itself. But I won't act. He paused. I won't doubt you. I won't let the city fall apart. I won't fall to the bottom. I'll wait. Sumuking remained silent for a long time. Her milky white eyes were fixed in his direction, unfocused, yet very bright. What are you waiting for? Wait for the betrayal to happen. Then stop acting. Sumuking smiled. There was weariness in that smile, but also a sense of relief, a feeling of I knew you would say that. How long will you have to wait? 30 days. Or longer. Until they can't write anymore. Sumuking lowered her head and wrote a line on the paper. She wrote slowly, the pen tip wore down, and the handwriting was faint. When she finished, she tore the paper off and handed it to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan took the paper. There were only 2 words on it. I believe you. Not I trust you, but simply I believe you. 2 words, missing the I, but carrying more weight. Because I was in the hands of the writer, while I believe you was for the recipient. Lin Yuan folded the paper and put it in his pocket. He placed it alongside his business cards, badges, stones, metal, paintings, umbrella, paper, pen, paper flowers, scraps of paper, letters, and diary. More than 20 different things. More than 20 reasons he couldn't forget. His pocket grew fuller and fuller, as did his heart. In the distance, Iron Hammer stood at the workshop entrance, his mechanical arm reflecting a cold light in the morning glow. He heard Lin Yuan's heartbeat from erratic to steady, from fast to slow. He tapped the ground thump. Then he turned and went into the workshop, beginning his blacksmithing. White Deer sat before the drawing board, sketching a figure in her sketchbook. Long hair, milky white eyes, a grey hoodie. Beside it was written a line, she is not a traitor. She didn't know what traitor meant, but she wrote it. Her pen knew more than her heart. The Red Queen stood on the city wall, her milky white eyes gazing into the distance. She thought of the island, the theater, the vote count. 42%. Her own votes were 27%. Not because she wouldn't be betrayed, it was because the readers didn't care that much about her. She didn't care. What she cared about was that she had never made the right choice. She chose the evil god, and the evil god was fake. She chose the City of Freedom, and the City of Freedom was just a script. She chose Lin Yuan, and Lin Yuan was also a character. But she didn't leave. Because she had nowhere else to go. The candle was cooking porridge in the communal kitchen, the flame flickering in her palm. Her body temperature was dropping, her lips turning purple. But she didn't put the pot down. The porridge was hot, the people were cold, but she kept cooking. She was waiting for them to wake up, waiting for them to drink the porridge, waiting for them to live. She didn't know the script of betrayal, didn't know the vote count, didn't know the 30-day countdown. She knew the porridge couldn't be burnt. Echo stood beneath the city wall, relaying a message for an old man. The old man said, "It's windy today," and Echo repeated, "It's windy today." The old man said, "Wear more clothes," and Echo repeated, "Wear more clothes." He didn't know what he was saying, but he knew the old man cared about him. His ability was to replicate sound, but he replicated more than just sound, he replicated human warmth. The stone statue was moving stones, its skin hardened into rock, its joints ached, but it kept moving. It was building a new wall, not a city wall, but a school wall. The children needed a draft-free place to study. More than 500 people in the City of Freedom are alive. They don't know what will happen in 30 days. They don't know the script of betrayal, they don't know the vote count, they don't know Sumuking's 42%. But they are alive. They are cooking porridge, moving stones, relaying messages, forging iron, and drawing. They are doing what they have to do. Lin Yuan stood in front of the medical tent, looking at the people there. He remembered Mr. Mo's words, "You are becoming the god of this city." He wasn't a god. The god was elsewhere, behind the screen, on the keyboard, writing his destiny. But was he acting? No, he didn't act. He waited. Waited for betrayal to come, and then stopped acting. Sumuking stood up and stood beside him. Her hand groped for his hand and took it. Her hand was rough, but warm. "Are you worried?" she asked. "Meeting. What are you worried about?" "They're worried I'm acting." Sumuking gripped his hand tightly. "You won't. Because you trust me." Lin Yuan looked at her. Her milky white eyes were unfocused, yet bright. A breeze swept through the City of Freedom, causing Mr. Mo's umbrella to sway gently. His shadow stretched long on the ground, like a needle pointing into the distance. 30 days. The countdown had begun. But he didn't count. He waited. On the 17th day of the countdown, the moon over the City of Freedom is red. It wasn't a lunar eclipse, nor was it the weather. The color of the light had changed. A massive crack in the sky emitted a dark red light, like a bleeding wound. That light shone on the ruins, turning the grey rubble rusty and staining people's faces an unhealthy red. Some said it was an ominous sign, some said it was a fluctuation of mythical energy, some said they believed nothing, just glanced up, then lowered their heads and continued walking. Lin Yuan stood in the doorway of that crooked house, looking at the red moon. He remembered the 7th level of the Tower of Babel, the red space, the red stone platform, the red words sacrifice a teammate. 17 days to go. The script of betrayal hasn't been executed yet. He waits every day, waiting for evidence to appear, waiting for witnesses to speak, waiting for suspicion to spread. But nothing happens. The city of freedom is still the city of freedom. People are cooking porridge, moving stones, relaying messages, forging iron, and painting. There is no division, no fear, no anger. Sumuking still sits outside the medical tent, bandaging patients, cooking medicine for the elderly, and telling stories to children. Her voice is soft, but the stories she tells are beautiful. Children surround her, listening to her tell the story of a cat and a fish. The cat wanted to eat the fish, but the fish said, "If you eat me, I will have no friends." The cat thought about it and didn't eat. They became friends. The children asked, "Won't the cat get hungry if it doesn't eat the fish?" Sumuking said, "The cat is hungry, but it doesn't want to be without friends." One child said, "Then what does it eat?" Sumuking thought for a moment, "Grass." The children laughed, and she laughed too. Her laughter was genuine. Lin Yuan stood in the distance. Looking at her smile, he remembered the poll 42%. She would be labeled a traitor. But here she was, smiling. He didn't know what she was smiling about, but he knew it was real. 15 days to go. The first drop of blood has flowed. He wasn't a resident of the free city, he was a stranger who had fled from the north. He lay at the city gate, covered in blood, his left arm severed at the shoulder, grayish substance wriggling at the cut. His eyes were a cloudy yellow, like rotting lemons. The Red Queen knelt down and touched his face. She couldn't see, but her fingers could feel the warmth. It was fading. "Who hurt you?" she asked. The stranger's lips moved, his voice very soft, as if coming from a great distance. "The church, the radiant church, they have arrived." "You're here? Where are you?" "We've arrived." His eyes closed. The Red Queen stood up, her milky white eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the city gates. She saw no one, heard no footsteps, and smelled no unfamiliar scents. But her intuition told her he was telling the truth. The Church of Radiant Light had arrived. Lin Yuan walked to the city gate and looked at the stranger's corpse. The gray substance was still spreading, covering his face, his neck, and his chest. His skin had turned to a stone-like texture, hardened and cold. The wristband did not vibrate. There was no warning. No high-energy reaction was detected. He crouched down and used his eye of insight to examine the corpse. Unnamed ordinary person. Cause of death, excessive blood loss. Source, Northern Daxia. Note, his death is not in the script. He escaped on his own. Not in the script. Lin Yuan stood up, looking into the darkness outside the city gate. What wasn't in the script wouldn't happen. But it had already happened. He remembered Chen Shi's words, "You can't stop them from writing it. But you can choose not to act it out." Chen Mo hadn't written this person. But this person died. Died at the gates of the free city. His blood was real, not written in the script. "Close the city gates," Lin Yuan said. Iron Hammer used its mechanical arm to push against the heavy iron gate, the hinges creaking with a harsh sound, like a long sigh. The Red Queen stood on the city wall, her milky white eyes gazing into the distance. Her dagger was lost, but she had taken a new one from the workshop. Iron, without runes, but sharp. Sumuking stood at the entrance to the medical tent, a roll of bandages clutched in her hand. She couldn't see, but she could hear the iron gate closing. Her fingers tightened. White Deer sat before a painting, sketching a door in her sketchbook. The door closed. Next to it was a line of text, "Door. Closed." She didn't know why it was closed, but she had drawn it. 13 days to go. No attack. No one came. The darkness outside the city remained. The stranger's body lay buried outside the city, without a tombstone, only a stone on the ground. Lin Yuan stood on the city wall, looking at that stone. He wondered what the man meant by "the church has come." Did they really come, or was it a hallucination before death? The wristband vibrated. Warning, an unusual energy fluctuation has been detected within the City of Freedom. Source, near the medical tent. Type, Divine Remnant. Grade, C. A remnant of divine magic lingered near the medical tent. Lin Yuan turned and ran towards it. The stone path rushed past his feet, the wind rushed past his ears, and his heart pounded in his chest. He reached the tent entrance and stopped. There was blood on the ground, not just one person's, it belonged to many. It stretched from the tent entrance all the way to the city gate, like a red river. Sumuking stood at the end of the bloodstains, clutching the roll of bandage in her hand, the bandage soaked in blood. "It's not mine," she said. Her voice was soft, without trembling. "I heard a sound and ran out. The person was gone. Only blood remained." Lin Yuan crouched down, looking at the blood. He touched the ground with his glove, and Eye of Insight activated. Source of bloodstains, residents of the City of Freedom. Quantity, at least 10 people. Time, 5 minutes ago. Perpetrator, unidentified. Note, residual divine magic was detected at the scene. Type, basic purification spell of the Church of Radiance. The Church of Radiance. They've arrived. Not from outside the city, they've come from inside. Someone has infiltrated without their knowledge. Iron Hammer ran from the workshop, the rust on his robotic arm resembling scars in the moonlight. He couldn't speak, but he used the robotic arm to write on the ground. "Who?" A single, crooked character. Lin Yuan looked at the character and shook his head. He didn't know. The Red Queen leaped down from the city wall, landing in front of Lin Yuan. There's no one outside the wall. There are people inside. I can't smell them. Her milky white eyes were fixed on Lin Yuan. It's not a matter of smell, it's that they have no smell. Like shadows. A shadow without scent. Lin Yuan stood up, looking at the city of freedom. More than 500 people. More than 500 people he thought he knew. But the shadow was mixed in among them. He couldn't tell them apart. The countdown has reached its 12th day. More and more people are disappearing. Not all at once but one by one. They're here in the morning, gone by night. No bloodstains, no signs of struggle, no trace of divine magic. They're like scraps of paper blown away by the wind, leaving no trace. The residents of the City of Freedom are beginning to fear. Not panic but a quiet, bone-deep dread. They dare not walk alone, dare not sleep alone, dare not go to the communal kitchen alone. They huddle together, like a flock of birds drenched in rain. Lin Yuan stands on the city wall, watching the people huddled together. He wonders, is this a script of betrayal? Not that Sumuking was framed. The City of Freedom is collapsing on its own. No traitors are needed, only fear. Fear can turn humanity into the most terrifying monsters. 10 days to go. 37 people have gone missing. Not simultaneously, it's several every day. From the first stranger who died at the city gate to today, 37 people. Their names are written on paper and posted at the city gate. Lin Yuan stands in front of that paper, looking at those names. Some he recognizes, some he doesn't. But he knows they are all people. Living people. Sumuking stood beside him, her milky white eyes fixed on the paper. She couldn't see the name on it, but her hands were trembling. Who is it today? She asked. Uncle Zhang. Aunt Li Littlestone. Littlestone's mother. Sumuking's fingers tightened. Littlestone. 5 years old. Boy. His mother often brought him to the medical tent for dressing changes. His knees were always scraped and bruised because he ran too fast. Every time, he would say, Auntie, it doesn't hurt. He ran too fast to be caught. Lin Yuan. Sumuking's voice was very soft. Did I do it? Lin Yuan turned to look at her. I didn't do it. But the evidence points to me. Do you believe me? Letter. That's enough. She turned and walked away. Her steps were steady, but Lin Yuan noticed her hands were trembling. She didn't care about the evidence, the suspicion, or the 42%. She cared about Littlestone. 5 years old. Running too fast. He couldn't catch up. 9 days to go. Evidence has emerged. Sumuking's handwriting was found at the scene of the disappearance. Not her pen but her handwriting. Exactly the same, even experts couldn't tell the difference. Sumuking's writing ability was already very weak. She couldn't write such neat characters anymore. But the evidence said the pen was hers. Remnants of divine magic were also found at the scene of the disappearance, exactly the same as the divine magic Sumuking used before. But she could no longer use divine magic. From the day she defected from the Church of Radiance, her divine magic disappeared. But the evidence said the light was emitted by her. A witness also appeared. A resident of the City of Freedom said he saw Sumuking walk out of the medical tent at night and head towards the missing person's house. His eyes were sincere, not like he was lying. But his memory had been altered. Lin Yuan knew. But he couldn't prove it. The residents of the Free City began to split. Some said, Dr. So wouldn't do such a thing. Some said, the evidence is all there, why do you still believe her? Some said, let's wait and see, don't rush to conclusions. But fear was spreading. Like water seeping into a crack, like fog enveloping the earth. Lin Yuan stood at the city gate, listening to the discussions. He thought of the altar on the 7th floor of the Tower of Babel, the red space and the vote numbers. 42%. Not the reader's votes, but the power of plot correction. It was forcing him to doubt. 7 days to go. Lin Yuan sat outside the medical tent, head down, clutching the stone he'd brought from the kindergarten. It was gray and cold. He thought of the principal, of Xiaoyu, of the children's singing. They were real. Not scripted. Because their pain was real. But what about Sumuking's pain? She asked, did I do it? She said, the evidence will point to me. She didn't care about herself, she cared about the little stone. The little stone ran too fast, he couldn't catch it. Sumuking came out of the medical tent and sat down next to him. She reached out, groped for his hand, and took it. Her fingers were rough, but warm. Do you believe me? She asked. Letter. Then why are you sitting here? Lin Yuan paused for a moment. I'm thinking, if one day there's too much evidence, too many witnesses, and nobody believes you anymore, will I still believe you? Sumuking didn't answer. She waited. I still believe, he said. Sumuking squeezed his hand. Then don't sit. Go get to work. Lin Yuan stood up. He walked towards the city wall, climbed to the highest ruin, and stood beside Mr. Mo's umbrella. The wind blew, making the umbrella, torn in two, flutter loudly. He looked at the City of Freedom, at the people huddled together, at the piece of paper with 37 names written on it at the city gate. He didn't investigate the truth, didn't look for the murderer, didn't try to prove Sumuking's innocence. Standing on the high ground, he spoke a sentence to the people of the City of Freedom. His voice wasn't loud, but the wind carried it far. Sumuking is not a traitor. I will not doubt her. You can doubt her, but I will not pretend. Silence. More than 500 people watched him. Some believed him, some didn't, and some were still waiting. But he spoke. He wasn't acting. Lin Yuan's voice still echoed in the air. Sumuking is not a traitor. I will not doubt her. You can doubt her, but I will not act. More than 500 people looked at him, silent for a long time. Then the first person spoke, not with anger, but with fear. What about the 37 people? Did they die in vain? Lin Yuan looked at the person who spoke. A middle-aged man, scarred on his face, his left arm missing, the sleeve hanging empty. He was the one who asked on the ruins, how can we live without God's protection? His name was Chen Hai. He had fled from Nanjing. His wife had died in the Great Rift, and his daughter was still in the Free City. He stood in front of the crowd, his grey eyes looking at Lin Yuan, his lips trembling. He didn't die in vain. I will find the killer. When? 1 day? 2 days? 10 days? 37 people. How many died each day? How many were left when you found them? Chen Hai's voice grew louder and louder, not from anger, but from fear. He was afraid that his daughter would be next to die. Lin Yuan didn't answer. He couldn't answer. He didn't know who the murderer was, when they would be found, or who would be next. He only knew that Sumuking wasn't the murderer. The silence was broken by a stone. It wasn't thrown from Chen Hai's hand, it came from behind the crowd. Lin Yuan didn't see who it was, only that a fist-sized rock arced through the air and struck Sumuking's shoulder. She swayed, but didn't fall. Her hand was still clutching the roll of bandage, which was covered in blood, not hers, but the missing person's. Traitor, someone shouted. A spy for the Church of Radiance. She never defected. Lin Yuan was fooled by her? More stones flew towards him. Lin Yuan stood in front of Sumuking, blocking the stones. One hit him in the chest with a dull thud, like a hammer striking wood. Another hit his arm, his glove gleamed, a dark red light flowing from his fingertips, and the stone bounced off. Another hit his forehead, he didn't block it. The stone struck above his brow bone, splitting his skin, and blood flowed down, from his left eyebrow to the corner of his eye, from his eye to his cheek, and from his cheek to his chin. He didn't wipe it away, he didn't dodge, he simply stood there. Hammer charged forward. The mechanical arm blocked Lin Yuan's path, and another stone struck the arm, leaving a dent. Hammer could no longer speak, but his mechanical arm was making noise, not a thud, but a roar. The sound of metal rubbing against metal was grating, like a knife being sharpened on a stone. Bailu ran over. She held her sketchbook, turned to a new page, and wrote 3 large characters with her paintbrush, "Stop fighting." The characters were large and forceful, the pen tip even tore through the paper. She held up the sketchbook for everyone to see. Her deep blue eyes reddened, but she didn't cry. The Red Queen stood on the city wall, her milky white eyes fixed on the crowd. Her dagger remained sheathed, but she stood on high, like a sword yet to be drawn. She didn't know who would throw a stone, but she knew that if Lin Yuan fell, the City of Freedom would be gone. Sumuking stood behind Lin Yuan. She didn't speak, didn't dodge, didn't block. Her hand still clutched the roll of bandage, soaked in blood. Her milky white eyes were fixed straight ahead, unfocused, but she could hear the whistling of stones, the dull thuds of stones hitting bodies, the roar of the hammer, the sound of Bailu's paintbrush piercing paper. She heard the sound of Lin Yuan's blood dripping onto the ground. Tap, 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 like the tip of Mr. Mo's umbrella touching the ground. That's enough. Her voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard it. Not because it was loud, it was because she had never spoken in such a setting before. She was a doctor, she spoke in medical tents, by hospital bedsides, and in front of children. She didn't speak in front of crowds. The stone stopped moving. Sumuking stepped out from behind Lin Yuan and stood beside him. Her milky white eyes were fixed on the crowd, unfocused but bright. "I didn't kill anyone," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I'm blind. I can't leave the medical tent at night. You can try it yourselves. Can a blind person, in the dark of night, walk to a missing person's house, kill them, and then come back? Without leaving a trace, without being seen, and simultaneously appearing in 37 different places." The crowd fell silent. Some lowered their heads, some looked at the ground, and some stared into Sumuking's milky white eyes. She couldn't see them, but she knew they were watching. An old man stepped forward. He was over 70 years old, with completely white hair, a hunched back, and a wooden cane in his hand. He was the oldest resident of the Free City, having fled from Suzhou. He stood at the front of the crowd, looking at Lin Yuan. 37 lives. You're making us wait. Wait until how long? Lin Yuan looked at him. When the truth comes out. Not evidence, not witnesses, it's the truth itself. What if the truth is that she is the one? No. What if that's the case? Lin Yuan looked into the old man's cloudy eyes, at the wooden cane in his hand, and at his hunched back. He thought of Mr. Mo, of the umbrella broken in two, and of his words, "God can do it too. But believers don't." Wait. If it turns out to be her, I'll give my life for you. Silence. All eyes were fixed on Lin Yuan's face. Blood streamed down his chin, dripping onto the ground. He didn't wipe it away. The old man stared at him for a long time. Then he turned, leaning on his cane, and walked away. The crowd dispersed. Sumuking grasped Lin Yuan's hand. Her hand was trembling. "You shouldn't have risked your life to vouch for me. I believe you. Faith cannot replace life." Yes. Lin Yuan held her hand. Faith is life. The wind swept through the City of Freedom, causing Mr. Mo's umbrella to sway gently. Blood-red moonlight shone on the ruins, turning the grey rubble rusty. Iron Hammer stood on the city wall, the dents on his mechanical arm like fresh scars in the moonlight. White Deer sat on the ground, clutching her sketchbook. She tore out the page that read "Stop hitting," crumpled it into a ball, and threw it on the ground. Then she drew a new sun, large, round, and golden. Next to it, she wrote, "The sun. Still here." The bloodstains stretched from the city gate all the way to the painting. Lin Yuan squatted on the ground, his fingers pressing against the dried blood. It was dark red and already cold. His eye of truth was still active. In wireframe mode, every house, every road, and every person in the City of Freedom had become semi-transparent data and lines. He was tracing the evidence handwriting, remnants of divine magic, and the memories of witnesses. They were like glowing lines, starting from the missing people's houses, passing through walls, through cobblestone streets, through crowds, converging at the same point. That person never left the City of Freedom, but also never entered anyone's house. He was outside the whole time. On the street, in the moonlight, beside that painting. Lin Yuan stood up and followed the threads. The threads were golden, very thin, like spider silk. They passed through the communal kitchen, through the workshop, through the medical tent, and through the crooked house. They stopped in front of the painting. The painting depicted many people: a young man with black hair, a bald man, a man with white hair, a man in a grey trench coat, a man in a red trench coat, a man with a robotic arm, a man wielding a lightsaber, a man painting, a man boiling water, a man handing out tools, a man moving stones. And there was the woman with long hair, curved eyes, and paint on her apron. Below the painting was a line of text, "The City of Freedom. Where is he?" The lines converge on the person standing in front of the painting. Mr. Mo stood before the painting, holding an umbrella that had been split in two. His milky white eyes were fixed on the painting. He couldn't see it, but he stood there. His body was thin, like a withered tree, like a stone blown by the wind for a long time, like a silent statue. Lin Yuan stood behind him, silent. He didn't want to speak, because he already knew the answer. All the evidence spoke the same truth. The handwriting was Mr. Mo's. He had written many characters before, and his handwriting was almost identical to Sumuking's, because he had taught her to write. Long ago, in the first era, before she was Sumuking. The remnants of divine magic were Mr. Mo's. He wasn't an oracle, but his umbrella had been with him for 3 eras, accumulating enough mythical energy to simulate any kind of divine magic. The witness's memory was tampered with by Mr. Mo, not with divine magic, but with the umbrella. Simply walking past someone with the umbrella would cause that person's memory to become blurred and distorted, like paper soaked in rain. He walked the streets of the free city every day, from sunrise to sunset, from east to west. He wasn't taking a stroll, he was tampering. A person's memory, erased a bit, rewritten a bit, added a bit. I saw Sumuking. It was her. She killed someone. Mr. Mo turned around. His movements were slow, like a rusty machine, but he didn't fall. His milky white eyes were fixed on Lin Yuan, unfocused, yet bright. He looked at Lin Yuan as if he were looking at someone he had known long ago. You found it. His voice was hoarse, like sandpaper scraping against sheet metal. But he didn't ask, how did you find it? Because he knew he would find it. He was waiting for him to find it. Why? Lin Yuan's voice trembled. His fingers trembled, his breath trembled, his heart trembled. Not from fear, but from pain. He remembered the 7th level of the Tower of Babel, where Mr. Mo sacrificed all his ties with everyone, forgetting them. But he didn't leave. He held up the umbrella broken in two, following at the very back, tap, tap, tap. He didn't recognize them anymore, but his body remembered. His body remembered to protect them. His body remembered the City of Freedom. His body remembered Lin Yuan. Mr. Mo smiled. There was weariness in that smile, but also a sense of relief, as if to say, you finally asked that question. You think I'm helping you, he said, his voice hoarse, but every word clear. I'm just helping this world maintain balance. You awakened too quickly, so quickly that the lifespan of this story will be shortened. Shortened means ending, and ending means all the characters will disappear. I'm protecting you, in my own way. Lin Yuan looked at him. The umbrella shattered in two, milky white eyes, withered fingers, the veins bulging on the back of his hand. He was protecting them, in his own way. He killed 37 people, framed Sumuking, and plunged the City of Freedom into division. Because division means conflict, conflict means plot, and plot means the story continues. As long as the story continues, the characters will not disappear. You killed them. Lin Yuan's voice was soft. 37 people. They weren't characters, they were human beings. I know. Mr. Mo's voice softened. I remember every single one of them. Their names, their faces, their voices. The first was Uncle Zhang, the second was Aunt Li, the third was Little Stone. I remember. I won't forget. But I can't let the story end. When the story ends, everyone will disappear, including you, including Sumuking, including Iron Hammer, including White Deer, including the Red Queen, including those children. 37 lives for 500 lives. Is it worth it? I've asked myself that too. 3 eras, I've asked myself that countless times. Every time the answer is the same: no, it's not worth it, but I have no other choice. Lin Yuan's fingers tightened. He remembered what Mr. Mo had said: what you see, some people spend a lifetime trying to forget. He was talking about himself. He had seen the truth, and he chose to forget. But he hadn't forgotten. He remembered everything. Mr. Mo took the umbrella off his shoulder, gripping the handle with both hands as if it were a sword, a cane, or a person's hand. He looked at Lin Yuan, and for a moment, a light flashed in his milky white eyes, not the light of a god, but his own light. Time reversal, he said. I can restore the City of Freedom to its state before it was destroyed. Corpses will rise again, bloodstains will disappear, and cracks will heal. The price is my existence. 3 eras will suffice. Lin Yuan rushed forward. He wanted to grab Mr. Mo's hand, to snatch the umbrella, to stop him. But his fingers passed through Mr. Mo's arm, not through, but Mr. Mo's arm was becoming transparent. Like ice melting in the sunlight, like snow disappearing in spring. Starting from his fingertips, transparent, then vanishing. Not pain, but emptiness. Mr. Mo smiled. Don't be sad. 3 eras, that's enough. I've seen the world of the first era, the blue sky, without cracks. I've seen that woman, the red dress, the 2 dimples. I've seen the city of freedom, from ruins to a city, from a few people to hundreds. That's enough. He looked at Lin Yuan. His milky white eyes cleared for a moment before fading away. He remembered. He remembered the first era, he remembered that woman, he remembered the city of freedom, he remembered Lin Yuan. He remembered everything. In the next volume, you'll see the real screenwriter. His voice was soft, like wind rustling through withered leaves. Not the lost. Not the reader. The real screenwriter. He's in the deepest, most encrypted zone. He's waiting for you. His body transformed into specks of light. Golden, like fireflies, like stars, like the light shining through the cracks in Mr. Mo's umbrella. The specks of light scattered, drifting into the sky, drifting to every corner of the city of freedom. A line of golden words appeared in the air, large and bright, seen by everyone. Important NPC Mr. Mo has left the stage. Thank you for your support over the past 3 years. Lin Yuan knelt on the ruins, clutching the oil paper umbrella broken in 2. The umbrella was light, almost weightless. 11 cracks ran across its surface, each representing a loss. The first crack, the world of the first era. The second, that woman. The third, his memories. The fourth, his voice. The fifth, his name. The sixth, his sight. The seventh, his bonds. The eighth, his faith. The ninth, his self. The 10th, his umbrella. The 11th, his life. Sumuking stood behind him. She couldn't see the points of light, but she could feel the direction the wind was blowing, and she could feel something dissipating in the air. Like a sigh, like a goodbye. Her hand rested lightly on Lin Yuan's shoulder. He's gone? Lin Yuan didn't speak. He gripped the umbrella, kneeling on the ruins. The wind swept through the city of freedom, scattering the scattered points of light from Mr. Mo in all directions. The points of light landed on the rooftops of the houses, like a thin layer of snow. They landed on Bailu's painting, adding a layer of golden light. They landed on the mechanical arm of the hammer, covering the rust with light, making it look new. They landed on the Red Queen's dagger, warming the blade. They landed beneath the painting. The painting depicted many people. Mr. Mo stood at the very back, holding an umbrella. Below the painting were words written by Bailu. He will not forget. Bailu sat in front of the painting, holding the sketchbook. She could no longer speak, but she picked up a paintbrush and drew an umbrella on the sketchbook. It was torn in 2, with 11 cracks on its surface. Next to it, she wrote a line. The umbrella is still there. He is no longer there. The words were small, but written with great force. The paper was torn by the tip of the pen. Hammer stood at the workshop entrance, the rust spots on the robotic arm covered by specks of light, but he didn't move. He heard the sound of those specks of light hitting the ground, very soft, like rain, like snow, like the tip of Mr. Mo's umbrella touching the ground. Tap, tap, tap. The Red Queen stood on the city wall, the dagger in her hand growing warm. She raised the dagger, holding it up to the moonlight. There were no runes on the blade, no light, but it was warm. She didn't know what this feeling was, but she didn't let go. Zhu was cooking porridge in the communal kitchen. She didn't know what was happening, but she saw golden specks of light drift in from the window and land in the porridge. The porridge hadn't gone bad, but it had warmed up. She ladled a bowl and placed it by the window. Not for anyone to drink, just to leave it there. Echo stood beneath the city wall. He heard a sigh, very soft, like the wind blowing through a crack. He didn't know whose voice it was, but he copied it. He hid the sigh in his throat, not letting it out. He kept it inside. The statue was moving stones. He stopped and watched the golden specks of light fall onto the stone, warming it. He placed the stone next to the painting. Not to build a wall, but simply to leave it there. Lin Yuan stood up. He gripped the umbrella, broken in 2, standing at the highest point of the city of freedom. Moonlight shone on him, casting a long, long shadow. He looked down at the city of freedom, at the points of light, at the living. Mr. Mo was gone. But he left behind the umbrella, the points of light, and those words in the next volume. You will see the true screenwriter. The true screenwriter. Not lost, not the reader, but the one who writes lost. He is in the deepest part of the deepest encrypted zone. He is waiting for him. Sumuking walked onto the ruins and stood beside him. She reached out, groped for his hand, and took it. Her hand was rough, but warm. Let's go, she said. Let's go back. Lin Yuan gripped the umbrella, gazing at the city of freedom. Over 500 people awoke amidst golden specks of light. They didn't remember what had happened, the 37 people who had died and come back to life, or who Mr. Mo was. They only remembered having a dream of an umbrella, broken in 2, held open. In the dream, someone spoke a sentence, unintelligible, but they remembered the voice hoarse, like sandpaper scraping against sheet metal, like saying goodbye. Lin Yuan turned and walked towards the ruins. Sumuking followed behind him. The tip of the umbrella touched the ground, tap, 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 as if Mr. Mo was still walking. He wouldn't forget. They wouldn't forget. The painting was there, the umbrella was there, the light was there. He was still there.